Chapter 177. The reproduction of a portion of the dynamo core's functions? Luonan came to this conclusion, and was somewhat stunned. He lacked a complete understanding of the origins of the dynamo core. He had more of a guess from the conversation between Jack and Yin Yonghua. This sort of thing should be a cutting-edge product produced by the Apocalypse Laboratory behind Quantum Corporation. It possessed overwhelming control over electronic devices. It was a key technology of the fourth-generation burner, and could be applied to altered humans. Through special application methods, it could completely break the boundaries between altered humans and burners. For example, Jack. Such sensitive technology had suddenly appeared in Frost River Reality, a virtual attraction project for the masses. Moreover, it had appeared in such a special segment. Even if it was just a small segment, even if the government, the military, the Ability User Society, and various technology companies were all involved, it was still hard to believe that this was just a coincidence of heroes having the same idea. Was it a repeated experiment hidden within the project? Or was the Apocalypse Laboratory also involved in the project? Did the society know about this situation? The series of questions made Luonan a bit stupefied. It seemed that he had once again stepped into some muddy water. Of course, as long as he could face the truth, he was more than happy to do so. Luonan muttered to himself as he weighed the chip helmet a few times. His eyes gradually lit up. He certainly could not take this helmet away. He certainly could not dig out the chipset inside, but he had a more perfect substitute. His dynamo core, the external neuron. Luonan had never used his own dynamo core to build the Tower of Babel. He was worried that his body would not be able to withstand it, and he would end up like Jack. But now he had a complete set of peripherals for Frost River Reality. He used the dynamo core's dominance over electronic equipment. The two combined to recreate the immersive virtual experience specifically provided for ability users. It would not be a big problem. The experience was a small matter. If he could dig out some deep information from it, then that would be a huge harvest. Luonan could no longer endure it. He could not use Frost River number 3, but it was fine. He could change locations. He immediately threw away the chip helmet, hugged his original equipment, and strode out the door. Frost River number 3 immediately closed behind him, unable to be opened again. He did not care. He quickly walked back to Hu Huaying's VIP room. The facilities here were still in an active state. The room was empty. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Alone. Luonan took a deep breath and walked onto the high-back starship chair. He put on the tactical helmet that was missing a crucial chipset and connected it to the system. For aptitude users, without the mental guidance function of the chipset, the so-called tactical helmet was just a clumsy toy. They could not control the penetration of mental senses at all. All the virtual scenes became a joke. But this time, Luonan was neither impatient nor impatient. His thoughts stirred within this disordered light and shadow. The external neuron that had been hiding between the left and right thalamus, at the location of the central mass, extended noiselessly. It pierced into the area of the chip. It sensed a bit, and the structure automatically forked, docking with the reserved interface. Energy and information converged and operated. The process was clearly displayed, and the structure was not much different. However, it was 100 times, 1,000 times more exquisite than a chipset simulation. And the amount of energy and information it could carry and process was also hundreds or even thousands of times more. Luonan felt his helmet heat up. Compared to the dynamo core's almost limitless processing power, the helmet itself was a bit unable to hold on. But this wasn't a big problem. At this very moment, Luonan's mental senses no longer expanded outwards. Instead, he found a direction to entrust his mental senses to. It was just like the feeling of storing his soul strength within the dynamo core, unable to bear the heavy burden of the past few days. It was just that the inside of the dynamo core was empty before. It was like a deep and silent void. But now it had color and structure. And layer upon layer, it grew more and more gorgeous, gradually forming a world. Luonan's consciousness wandered within, sensing in detail. This kind of guidance was much stronger than those divided specks of light. And it wasn't like the chip, which was always separated by a layer. Instead, It was completely and thoroughly touching. It was truly wholehearted immersion. What would happen? In a flash of thought, his mind was completely immersed. It was as if time had flowed backward. When Luonan came back to his senses, he was already back in the jump pod. He was facing the operating console and the circular window. The pressure of the combat uniform, the weight of the helmet, and the support of the high-back chair were all transmitted back to the central nervous system through the sensors all over his body. They interweaved with the scene before his eyes, which was indistinguishable from reality and illusion. Luonan was completely brought into this marvelous world. At this very moment, there was no system guidance. There were only two graphical options on the circular window before his eyes. Luonan's scalp went slightly numb the instant he saw the graphic. The graphic on the right was a simple sphere. This chapter has yet to end. Please turn the page. And the one on the left was the one he was the most familiar with. The visualization graphic, the format pyramid. Perhaps he had been in a daze for too long, but the system finally spoke once more. It was still Nina's clear female voice. Do you need a novice guide? Yes. Please select the activity mode 1, archetype mode, 2, optional mode. Following Nina's instructions, the visualization graphic and the sphere lit up one after another on the circular window, indicating which was the archetype and which was the optional mode. Archetype, huh? Luonan felt a bit awkward, but a certain excitement of being able to peek into a great secret heavily bombarded his heart. He felt strands of cold air seep through the gaps of his teeth. His gaze involuntarily locked onto the most familiar graphic. Select archetype mode. The visualization graphic lit up and shifted to the center of his field of vision. The other sphere gradually faded away. At the same time, a certain man's deep voice rang in Luonan's ears. In a certain sense, every person is a pile of molecular polymers. And every person's life process is the oxidation process of this pile of molecular polymers. The human body itself is in the midst of combustion. Luonan felt a trembling electric current run through his spine when he heard these words. A layer of goosebumps covered his entire body. He nearly jumped out of his chair for a moment. But another force made him motionless. The deep male voice continued. The combustion of ordinary people is inefficient, whether it's production, storage, or utilization. It limits our body structure, affects our lifespan, and through heredity, affects our form of existence for generations to come. But as the mysteries of life are explored in depth, it is hard for people to be satisfied with this kind of inefficient mode. People unceasingly try to improve it. Muscles, bones, internal organs, nerves, genes, consciousness. Traces of technological transformation are left behind in every domain, yet they are fragmented and not systematic. This continues until people choose a completely new structural system to truly integrate the fragmented results together. The visualization graphic enlarged in Luonan's field of vision. Countless lines interweaved, outlining the outlines of bones, internal organs, nerves, and muscles. Then they pieced together to form a complete human body. The human body was placed within the visualization graphic and sat majestically. This is the burner that transcends human tradition. This is the embodiment of a certain direction of evolution. Chapter 178. Luonan experienced another failed teleportation and returned to the Frost River waterway with a rumbling sound. The rapid flow of water and debris flooded his body, bringing a bone-piercing chill. Luonan did not immediately stand up. Instead, he pressed his head, which was wearing the tactical helmet, into the water. He used the cold and rapid flow of water to clear his head. When he decided to use the dynamo core to replace the chipset and connect with the frozen star system of Frost River reality, it was hard for him to imagine that he would dig up information to this degree. It turned out that the temporary authority Bai Xinyan gave him did not touch upon the core of this virtual reality project. It was only when the antennae of the external neuron touched upon the lowest level of the frozen star system that he was able to see its deep mysteries. Simulating a burner. A burner simulator. Frost River reality, which was loved by young people, had this kind of function. Okay, this was completely within reason. The government and the military were involved, And it was a huge project like virtual reality. It was very normal to borrow the chicken to lay the egg, to do some model construction, actual combat deduction, and so on. However, this kind of optimization, that was specifically targeted at ability users and burners, as well as the technological methods used, really made one's imagination run wild. Luo Nan was already used to skipping over the familiar plot guide, so he did not pay too much attention to it. He just pondered over his current state, wanting to see what was different in the end. Suddenly, Nina's warning streaked across his ears. Please pay attention to the internal energy reserves of the archetype format. Allocate your energy properly and avoid freezing. The lines changed? Luo Nan suddenly realized something. He still remembered that Nina's guide process was to indicate that his combat uniform was damaged, and that the water in the waterway was abnormal. Then she said, please move your body sufficiently to avoid freezing. What the hell was this internal energy reserves that suddenly popped out? The scene on his retina changed as this thought flashed through his mind. A thick, white U-shaped symbol appeared in the lower left corner, reminding Luo Nan of his attention. When Luo Nan's gaze was focused on the U-shaped symbol, the deep and low background explanation rang out once more. Through the introduction of the archetype format, burners transcend the traditional inefficient combustion mechanism of humans. They fully convert and utilize the internal energy of the human body to obtain a higher utilization efficiency. When the explanation rang out, the U-shaped symbol changed color. It changed from its initial white color to red, orange, and green. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Red, blue, purple, and then return to the original white. During this period, the colors in the U-shaped logo kept rising and falling, revealing the most important information in a visual way. Luo Nan combined the relevant text with the explanation, and soon understood the meaning within. Burners could utilize the archetype format to continuously transform, store, and increase the internal energy of the human body. The water level, within the U-shaped symbol, was the amount of internal energy reserves that could be utilized. And the color changes of the spectrum were the energy forms arranged from low to high efficiency. There were a total of 6 levels. It was obvious that when a burner's internal energy reserves were very close, the key factor that determined the level of their abilities lay in the form of energy. C. The chemical energy naturally generated in the body of a strong man weighing 100 kilograms combined with the mechanical energy produced by his muscles was a joke compared to the antimatter annihilation reaction created by a strand of a baby's fetal hair. Of course, this comparison itself was a joke. But this was the secret of the burner's power, or at least a very important part of it. Luo Nan stood up straight. The ice-cold water continued to wash over him without end, causing the temperature of his body to rapidly decrease. He didn't move. Instead, he waited. Where was the internal energy reserves? Where was the archetype format? Even though his body was within a game system, Luo Nan didn't believe that he was simply playing a game. The so-called internal energy reserves, and archetype format, shouldn't be concepts set up by the game. They shouldn't be labeled as data. There must be some sort of concrete experience. Even though the method he used to enter this place wasn't very standard. BZZT BZZT BZZT. A strange noise rang out. The scene displayed on Luo Nan's retina, and the background explanation by his ear became a bit fuzzy. It was clear that there was a strong interference. The interference passed in the span of a second or two. But whether it was the background explanation or Nina's system guidance, there was no follow-up. There was only the singing that came from the radio waves of the Frost River bar in the distance. It mixed with the clamor towards Luo Nan, who was within the waterway, and it called out, "I used the fine wine of my memories to fan the flames, to solidify her within the layer of ice." Luo Nan could feel the top of his head lightly vibrate amidst the cold and intermittent singing. A numb and crisp feeling spread from top to bottom, layer by layer, from the top of his head. Please continue to the next page if this chapter doesn't end. It gradually spread to his shoulders, neck, chest, back, waist, and legs. In the end, it converged to the soles of his feet. During this time, his brain, spinal cord, and even the 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves all transmitted fine feedback. Moreover, This spurred the nearly 1,000 bones, muscles, and even the billions of blood vessels and fibers in his entire body to form an innumerable signal that was transmitted back to the central nervous system of his brain. Luonan wanted to distinguish these signals one by one, to clearly understand the meaning contained within, and to instantly make the correct response. Even if Luonan's brain was transformed into a supercomputer, he still wouldn't necessarily be able to do it. But when these signals swarmed over and circled around the external neuron, they instantly separated into a marvelous order. Some were a bit stronger, some were a bit weaker. Some were a bit more urgent, some were a bit more relaxed. If Luonan were to clarify their respective positions and arrange them in a dense manner, it would be like drawing. Different shades of lines and shadows would instantly combine to form a direct and deep structural whole. Next, Luonan's consciousness naturally sprouted, directly embedding itself into the center of gravity that dominated the structural balance. Driven by some marvelous thought, Luonan sat back down in the water. He assumed the double-coiled body posture, and his entire body was fixed at the bottom of the river. From the top of his head to the two sides, his shoulders, his elbows, and his knees formed two perfectly straight diagonal lines. They connected to the bottom of the river, forming a stable pyramid structure. The rapid scouring of the water pounced onto his head in an instant. The powerful pressure from the outside world was transmitted in layer by layer, transforming into energy and information. It was transmitted between the millions and millions of nerves, blood vessels, and fiber tissues. In the end, it formed a weak but just right stimulation. It was like a tiny spark that was thrown into the center of gravity where Luonan's consciousness was located. It was as if he had thrown himself into a deep pool filled with kerosene. Boom! The flames leaped and soared, practically engulfing everything. Of course, this wasn't a true fire. It could only be said that the pouring of his consciousness had magnified this feeling. But when Luonan's consciousness shifted away and he sensed normally, there was clearly a mass of warm energy radiating from his lower abdomen. It was at this moment that the pure white, water level of the U-shaped symbol on his retina suddenly dropped. It dropped all the way to a third of its original value before it barely stopped falling. But it still trembled endlessly. The momentum didn't look too good, but Luonan could feel a sense of control and acuity that corresponded with his body's sensations. Chapter 179. Luonan opened his eyes, but he still maintained his sitting posture. He let the penetrating cold water flow shatter the ice and continuously beat against his chest. Occasionally, a cold blade splashed out. It seemed to be able to penetrate the defense of the tactical helmet and directly cut his face. It also seemed to be releasing mocking whispers. "Ha! What's appearing in your body right now? What's jumping?" What appeared was the archetype format. What jumped was the format of fire. Luonan did not immediately jump down from the starship highback chair. He had already expected this result. He was even looking forward to it. If it was a week or two ago, he might have refused this opportunity out of some sort of self-esteem. But when he used the format of "My heart's a prison" to subdue the human-faced arachnid, to construct the format pyramid, to enter the out-of-body state, and to observe reality and illusion, many of his thoughts were greatly different. Only when a person had a firm foothold could they use an unhurried and objective attitude to face the problems of reality. Luonan was already convinced that the formatting theory he had inherited did indeed have practical effects. It was not inferior to the archetype format in any way. It was even more magical on the mental plane. But he also admitted that the archetype format had gone very deep into the development and application of the body's potential. It had already established a relatively complete system standard. It was an extremely amazing thing to be able to successfully reproduce it in the virtual reality system. What he needed to do right now was to dig deep into the mysteries within. From the archetype format itself to the source of reproduction and technology, he would not let a single strand slip by. The water level of the U-shaped symbol continued to fluctuate and fall, showing that Luonan's internal energy reserves were continuously being consumed. However, this consumption had already shown its value. Right now, the temperature manifested by the internal energy in Luonan's lower abdomen was very real. Even under the pressure of the cold, it still firmly wrapped around his abdomen, causing his entire internal organs to feel a bit warm. Luonan got up and moved his hands and feet a bit. The effects of the internal energy manifesting were even more obvious under the state of movement. The energy of his entire body had an axis. Admittedly, heat was being consumed at all times, but a considerable portion was controlled, circulated, and flowed through the axis. It flowed from his upper limbs to his lower limbs, from places with high heat to places with low heat. It was naturally and efficiently distributed, maintaining the normal functions of the body. Luonan felt as if the outer layer of his skin and flesh had formed an armor propped up by heat. The bone-piercing cold didn't seem that unbearable anymore. Yes, that's it. This was the same nervous system control effect that Luonan had tried repeatedly in Frost River Room 3. But when it comes to the precision of the hypothalamus, if this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. When it came to complex structures, he gave up because he wasn't confident. But now, through internal energy and the archetype format, everything was done easily and naturally. When Luonan observed from the perspective of a bystander, he was able to sense that the front and back areas of the hypothalamus were stimulated, as well as the hot and cold sensors that covered the entire body. They coordinated and stimulated the tissues of the body up, down, inside, and outside in a highly resonant manner. They transported heat to and fro, forming a fine heat net that covered the entire body. The nerves, blood vessels, muscle fibers, and even more secretive and fine conduction pathways were involved. Compared to Luonan's own imagination, this regulation method was more than 1,000 times more complicated. However, this method of regulation was not brain-burning. All he needed to do was think about it and send out an unclear command. The archetype format completed all of this with the support of the internal energy reserve. Luonan began to walk forward with large strides. The effects of the heat armor were extremely outstanding. Even though the water level of the waterway gradually rose, and the surface of contact between the ice water and his body grew larger and larger, his body's reactions became more and more sensitive. He could easily avoid the enormous floating ice that was washed down by the rapid current. He could also feel the rapid and unstable undercurrents, controlling his body in time to maintain his balance. Soon he walked 200 to 300 meters away, far exceeding all previous records. It's really important to have a good software. Luonan suddenly felt a bit emotional. Because of the existence of the archetype format, he didn't need to directly face the complex and precise nervous system. Instead, he could use his internal energy to control it and realize idiot-like operations. He could focus more of his energy on responding to external stimuli. Luonan's self-format was the same. Did he know how to control the human-faced arachnid? Did he know how to increase his believers? He didn't know a single thing. Even if he had 10 times the strength he had right now, he would still need to personally experience all the details. He would need to dig all the way from the application all the way to the bottom layer. He would need to complete every link perfectly. But because he had the format pyramid of My Heart's a Prison, everything became easy. All he needed to do was to unearth the potential of the format pyramid, provide it with the required energy, and experiment with more efficient application methods. That was all. The current situation was quite interesting. The majority of Luonan's self-format targeted the soul and the mental plane. It didn't have any special effects on the fleshly body. The archetype format mobilized the potential of the human body to a large degree. It fully realized the control and application of various parts of the human body. But in the mental domain, the results could only be described as mediocre from the various examples he had seen recently. What were the factors that caused these two to be? This chapter has yet to end. Please continue to the next page. How could there be such a large divergence in the theory of originating from the same source? Thinking a step further, if the two were to be combined, would it be possible to create a formatting software that could be used simultaneously on the mental and material planes? Luonan was unable to find an answer for a time, but he was very clear on one point. Right now, he could only be said to be in contact with the archetype format software for the first time. His body hadn't truly formed the archetype format. The reason was very simple. The stimulation the archetype format gave his body right now, whether it was the operation of his brain and spinal cord, or the arrangement of the 43 cranial nerves and spinal nerves. All of them were different from his own format. The two were similar in design concept, but the details and emphasis were completely different. They could be compared, but they couldn't be confused. What he sensed right now was nothing more than the stimulation the system gave him. In essence, it was just like the incessant pounding of the icy stream of water. It was just some sort of data model projected onto his body. Though its effects were real, and it really did stir up a portion of his strength, transforming his internal energy reserves, and igniting the format of fire, its foundation was still empty. Luo Nen wasn't disappointed. The archetype format wasn't something he could casually use when it came to the modification of the deeper mechanisms of the body. It was already beyond his imagination that he could experience it for himself. The majority of Luo Nan's attention was projected onto his own body. His perception of the outside world gradually blurred. The only thing he could experience was the depth of the water. Right now, the icy water had already gradually submerged his chest, followed by his neck. Walking normally was practically impossible. Luckily, Luo Nen knew a bit about water, so he was able to walk and swim. But in this way, he had completely lost his grasp of time and distance. Right now, had he traveled 500 meters? Right when Luo Nan was about to look for the system to confirm, he felt a void beneath his feet. The tip of his toes could no longer reach the bottom. From here on out, the depth of the water exceeded his height. This was fine, but the problem was that the thick layer of rock above the water's surface was already within reach. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before the water completely submerged this long passageway. Not even the slightest crack would be left. The second stage? Right when Luo Nan was considering how to pass through this stage, a rumbling sound rang out. The rock wall behind him collapsed, and another stream of water rushed out. The two streams of water collided, forming a vortex of extraordinary strength. It instantly sucked him in and flung him fiercely, smashing him against the uneven cliff wall. He was smashed stupidly on the spot. His tactical helmet was damaged, and the icy stream assaulted him. What hotnet? What armor? None of it was of any use. Luo Nan's consciousness fainted, and the world shifted in an instant. Chapter 180. I failed again. But the difficulty has clearly increased. That's right, it's specially designed for burners. Luo Nan withdrew from the Frost River waterway. He didn't plan on continuing the experience for the time being. He just sat on the high-back starship chair and squinted his eyes. He felt the discomfort of his body after the stimulation signals left his body one after another. Even without the scouring pressure of the icy water, his body seemed to have become several dozen kilograms heavier. The coordination of his various parts seemed to have problems. His entire body was like an old machine without oil. His joints were a bit stiff. There was also the soreness and twitching caused by the tearing of some of his muscle fibers. This was the contrast caused by the separation of the archetype formats model. The amount of discomfort he felt right now was proof of the large gap between his body's standards and that of a passing standard. Only after a minute did Luo Nan begin to move his fingers. He regained control of his suddenly unfamiliar body. An analytical light screen had already been erected in front of the high-back chair at this time. It displayed the factors of success and failure in this waterway adventure in an unending stream. Luo Nan habitually looked at the evaluation first. The evaluation on it was unprecedentedly harsh. As a burner, the basic archetype format has made an unbelievably low-level error. The distribution of internal energy is at the beginner level. The coordination between the body and internal energy is close to zero. It is recommended that the format be immediately examined for errors and undergo strict foundational training. If necessary, the format should be reforged. It's that bad. Luo Nan rubbed his head. He couldn't help but laugh. Perhaps it was because the system's requirements had suddenly increased by a lot according to the standards of a burner. Then a three-dimensional image of a full body appeared on the holographic screen. Red and green dots of light and blue and white lines marked the densely packed nodes and silhouettes. The red dots representing errors could be said to be ghastly to the eye. Luo Nan was a bit surprised by this. Since it's a template chosen for the Dynamo core, how come there are so many errors? He casually chose a red dot on his chest, and several dots in the surrounding area lit up. It even involved another set of nodes far away in his legs. It showed that there was a very systematic connection between them. And on the holographic screen to the side, a close-up of the corresponding area appeared. There was a clear diagram on it, showing the internal energy as the axis. The relevant energy and information flowed, converged, and transformed within the special structure of this area. This included mutual interference, and even the material layer. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. The facial nerves, blood vessels, muscle fibers, bones, and internal organs were directly or indirectly affected. Even though Luo Nen didn't fully understand many of the models and formulas, he had the basic concept of the circulation of energy and information. He was able to more or less guess many of the parts. It was hard and strenuous for him to read for a time, but he enjoyed it with keen interest. Very quickly he found the problem. No wonder there were so many errors. Many of the nodes on the archetype format were actually affected by the interference of the self format. They were misaligned or confused. Even though Luo Nan had deliberately distinguished between the problems of the virtual world and the real world, he had formed his instincts over the past 5 years. His soul strength had increased greatly in recent days, and his imprints had continued to deepen. These imprints could not be easily erased. It could be seen from the playback system that the archetype format model had transformed in less than half a minute after it covered Luo Nan's body. Many key nodes had been displaced, and the virtual format of fire had yet to ignite. What was strange was that he was still able to successfully ignite, the first time when many pairs of nerve wiring were disrupted and distorted. What kind of logic was this? Luo Nan subconsciously pressed his hand against his lower abdomen. He didn't know if it was because of the heat conduction from his palm or something else, but he actually faintly felt that there really was a bit of warmth in this position. It gathered and did not disperse. Oh, strange. Luo Nan was puzzled no matter how he thought about it. He could only continue to refer to the system's analysis and playback in search of the reason. But as he watched and watched, he was faced with the comprehensive, thorough, and all-encompassing analysis screen. He was a bit stunned. Just this error correction system alone was something that his current family workshop style of research on the format was absolutely incapable of reaching. With such a system, with such timely and accurate simulation, playback, and error correction methods, as long as one had a bit of talent and knowledge in this area, and was able to put in hard work, it would be very difficult for one not to succeed over the years. No wonder the Deep Blue Walkers had already gathered the scale of 4 or 5 divisions in a short 5 or 6 years. And they were still continuing to expand. The archetype format theory had indeed soared to the skies in one bound after obtaining the support of capital and political power. The possibility of realizing a counterattack against it in the current social context was close to zero. As expected, I can only expand my influence in the ability user society. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. I've made some progress as a psychic or as a scout, but it's far from enough. It's far from enough. Luo Nan was a bit distracted. It was also at this time that his wristband vibrated. He received a call. It was Emochio. Third brother? Nanster, where are you? Emochio went straight to the point. Luo Nan was a bit startled. I'm upstairs. Where are you upstairs? Forget it. You can come down now. Actually, Emochio didn't care where Luo Nan was. He let out a long breath when he got through to him. Come to the guide desk in the reception hall. I'll wait for you here. Third brother, what's going on? It's nothing. Peng 17 just played with fire and overreacted a bit. I think it's best to go home and rest early. Hurry up and come down. Oh, okay. The two hung up and Luo Nan frowned. This third brother Chio was clearly lying. His words contained a forceful calmness. He probably didn't want a kid like him to worry. But the nervousness in his words had long since sold him out. What happened? Luo Nan's mind spun a few times, but he didn't tarry. He took off his peripheral equipment and walked out of the VIP room. As he was about to close the door, he remembered that Hu Huaying was the one treating. According to etiquette, he should at least give her a heads up. But he didn't give her a way to contact him. Luo Nan shook his head and walked quickly to the elevator. Not long after, he saw the two pretty guides. The long-haired and short-haired guides revealed sweet smiles. They raised their hats playfully from afar. "Hello, officer." Luonan nodded in response. He walked closer and said to the two, "When Senior Hu comes over, you guys tell him that I have business to attend to. I'll be leaving first." The short-haired guide opened her eyes wide. "Officer Luo, aren't you going to play a bit longer? It hasn't even been an hour." "No, I have business to attend to." Luonan nodded to the two and walked toward the elevator. The two guides looked at each other when they saw Luonan's hurried appearance. They bowed in unison. "We will definitely pass on your message." The elevator's door rang and opened to the side. Luonan was just about to enter when he saw 4 or 5 people walking out, laughing and laughing. They all looked drunk. One of them was Hu Huaying. Chapter 181. Luonan saw Hu Huaying, and Hu Huaying also saw Luonan. This bro's heat had yet to subside. She immediately staggered forward, patted Luonan's shoulder and hugged him. "Junior Nan, what's up? Playing by yourself is boring? I just happened to bring a bunch of brothers over. Let's start the game together and play Wilderness? Or something more exciting?" "It's okay, Senior Hu. My friend has something to do over there. Let me go down. I'll be taking my leave first." Luonan was polite. He didn't want to get tangled up with this drunkard. Hu Huaying blinked her eyes. Her mind was still not clear. "My friend invited me over to play. We're all very familiar with each other. I usually play with Junping." He raised his hand, wanting to introduce them one by one, but Luonan grabbed his forearm. Luonan locked gazes with Luonan and spoke softly, "No need, Senior. There will be opportunities in the future." Hu Huaying was suddenly at a loss for words. After a few sounds, she finally knew how to respond. "That's fine too." A few other drunkards surrounded the entrance of the elevator at this time. They had long since sized Luonan up. Most of them had no interest in him, but they were more interested in the two charming guides. Luonan gave Hu Huaying another nod. He turned his body and squeezed past this group of people. The person in the middle was probably drunk to the point of numbness. His body wasn't nimble. He bumped into Luonan's shoulder and staggered. His eyes widened as he wanted to flip out, but he was pulled away by the person beside him, making a path for himself. It wasn't Hu Huaying who pulled him away, but another acquaintance. Luonan's gaze swept over to that side, and he saw Lu Tao's scholarly face wearing glasses. It could be seen that this person was probably the most clear-headed out of all of them. Seeing Luonan shift his gaze over, Lu Tao lightly adjusted his glasses. The corner of his mouth twitched as a greeting, but his expression was a bit stiff. It seemed like she hadn't decided whether she should pretend not to know him, or treat him as an acquaintance. He was probably at Lu Tao's place, but he wasn't sure whether or not Luonan would be able to recognize him. Little did Luonan know that Luonan's impression of Luonan had already surpassed that of Lianyu, Li Xueqing, and the others, who had crossed paths with Luonan and clashed with Lianyu and Li Xueqing back on the warship. But since he was so conflicted, Luonan would just pretend that he didn't know him. Seeing Lu Tao here solved one of Luonan's doubts. No wonder he encountered drunkards one after another tonight. Sure enough, a bunch of second-generation rich kids were having a gathering here. Thinking about it, there were not many people in all of Xia City who could treat Frost River Reality as a hotel or restaurant. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. I didn't see Huang Bingjin. Luonan entered the elevator and nodded once more towards Hu Huaying in greeting. Soon, the elevator door slowly closed amidst the bidding farewell of the pretty guide. Lu Tao watched as the metal doors of the elevator closed. He confirmed that Luonan couldn't see him anymore. He finally let out the breath he had been holding in his throat. He didn't have much drunkenness to begin with, but all of it was let out with this breath. He turned his head and wanted to ask Hu Huaying, "Why is this guy here?" But the latter was still smiling and waving at the elevator door. Cursing inwardly, Zhang Xian hesitated for a moment before raising his wrist to contact someone. Who knew that another sound would ring out at this time? The elevator door that had just closed suddenly opened once more. Luonan was still alone in the elevator that was supposed to go down. His gaze swept across the faces of the group of drunkards outside the elevator. Lu Tao's heart suddenly twitched. His raised wrist froze in place. Luo Nan's gaze finally stopped on Hu Huaying's body. He revealed a faint smile and raised his wrist as well. He took a step forward. Senior Hu. Leave me your contact details. Hu Huaying was baffled. She slapped her head when she heard this. Look at my brain. Come. Let's add each other as friends. Let's keep in touch when we're in school. The two's wrists lightly touched and they added each other as friends on their wristbands. Hu Huaying enjoyed Luo Nan's display of goodwill. She patted Luo Nan's shoulder a few times. Luo Nan smiled as he accepted it, but he wasn't in a hurry to retreat. His gaze swept around and inexplicably locked onto Lu Tao's face. At this moment, Lu Tao looked straight into Luo Nan's eyes. Lu Tao's heart seemed to suddenly stop beating the moment his gaze made contact with those unclear pupils. He clearly knew that this reaction was too clumsy. He wanted to adopt a natural posture, but how could the instinctive reaction of the human body be controlled just because he wanted to? Lu Tao didn't know what kind of expression he had right now. He could only see that Luo Nan's gaze was fixed on his face. The smile he gave to Hu Huaying was still there, but he felt that something was wrong. Luo Nan's gaze moved down approximately half a second later. Luo Nan's eyes seemed to have a magnetic force. Lu Tao unconsciously moved down as well, just in time to see his own raised arm. In an instant, it was as if his arm had been branded by a red-hot branding iron. He suddenly pulled back and struck his own chest. Luo Nan's voice didn't fluctuate in response to this utterly terrible reaction. Senior Lu. Let's add each other as friends? This chapter has yet to end. Please turn the page. Okay. Lu Tao didn't even know what he was saying. He watched Luo Nan's arm move forward. He was like a marionette as he moved his arm forward. A slight vibration indicated that the two had finished adding each other as friends. On the other side, Hu Huaying's somewhat blank eyes hooked back. She said vaguely, "You guys know each other?" When these words entered his ears, it was as if Lu Tao had been struck by lightning. He was stupefied on the spot. Luo Nan acted as if nothing had happened. He retreated back into the elevator and answered simply, "We've seen each other quite a few times last week. See you seniors." The elevator door closed once more, and the number indicated that it had gone down. At this time, the other three people that Luo Nan had ignored began to come back to their senses. They were both baffled and annoyed. Someone said, "This fellow is quite arrogant. Where did he come from?" Lu Tao was already unable to hear Hu Huaying's reply clearly. His mind was a bit absent-minded right now. He raised his wrist and the contact list interface still displayed Luo Nan's name. He scrolled forward and saw that the contact he had just tried to make was not too far away. At this very moment, the wristband that was as light as a feather was clearly pressing down on his wrist. No. That fellow actually isn't that amazing. Lu Tao did his best to recall last week's incident at the restaurant. Luo Nan's miserable appearance when Yin Yongbua had casually soaked him. But in the end, all the images returned to the depths of Luo Nan's mottled pupils. The demonic and cold colors suffocated him to the point where he nearly suffocated. Lu Tao couldn't help but smack his head. F***ck me. Your brain is broken. You think you're smart. Taoster? What are you doing? Hu Huaying had a baffled expression on her face. I didn't know that you and Luo Nan were in contact. Did you also get to know him through Brother Ping? Lu Tao gaped. He didn't know how to respond at all. In the end, he raised his wrist once more. The contact list on the screen scrolled up and down along with his eyeballs, tossing back and forth between two names. Right when he didn't know what to do, one of the two names suddenly enlarged. It nearly filled his eye sockets. Huang Bingjin. The call connected. This idiot whose brain was half grainy and the other half was hallucinogenic shouted with his big tongue. Taoster. Hurry up and come over. All of you come over. I'll let you experience what supernatural powers are. Chapter 182. Luo Nan walked out of the elevator and raised his wrist to look at his wristband. The friend he just added didn't have any reaction. This was normal. He didn't expect a bit of psychological suggestion to be able to completely subdue the scheming Lu Tao. The various neurotransmitters on the material plane of the human body were encoded and encrypted. It was impossible for Luo Nan to see through all of Jack's thoughts with a glance, and even affect his thoughts and emotions. Plus, his most capable wraith sign wasn't by his side. However, it wasn't difficult to see through the general emotional inclination of a target, especially when the target harbored malicious intent. Luo Nan didn't pay much attention to Lu Tao in the beginning. He could only blame his own guilty conscience. His series of actions were filled with awkwardness, especially when the elevator doors closed for the first time. Lu Tao looked as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. Lu Tao certainly didn't know that Luo Nan didn't need his eyes to observe. Next, he just needed a bit of simple logic. Luo Nan thought about how Lu Tao perfectly avoided the limelight after his conflict with Huang Bingjin, and how he promptly showed himself. Luo Nan could roughly guess that Lu Tao must have discovered Luo Nan when he was spying on Huang Bingjin. It didn't matter if Lu Tao was helping Huang Bingjin vent his anger, or if Lu Tao had some other goal. Lu Tao definitely had bad intentions. Luo Nan naturally gave Lu Tao a bit of psychological suggestion in return. Under the overwhelming superiority of the mental plane, the consequences of this bit of psychological suggestion depended on Lu Tao's choice. Luo Nan walked in the opposite direction into the reception hall amidst the bustling stream of people and virtual images. He accurately found Emochio's position. It was just as Emochio said. He was waiting in front of the guide desk in the reception hall. But what was different from what Luo Nan had expected was that this third brother of his was all by himself. There was not a single person by his side. Even his target of friendship, Tianxi, was nowhere to be seen. Luo Nan squeezed through the stream of people and greeted, "Third brother, where are Mo Peng and the others?" Emochio didn't give a direct answer. He just forcefully put on a calm expression. "Nanster, you're here. Let's wait a bit longer. Mo Rue and Mo Han will be here soon." Luo Nan wasn't in the mood to beat around the bush. He directly said, "Did something happen to Mo Peng and the others? Did they offend someone and cause a conflict?" Luo Nan saw Emochio's stupefied expression as soon as he spoke. Luo Nan confirmed that he had hit the bull's eye. Emochio's first reaction was, "Mo Peng contacted you?" Luo Nan spread his hands. "I'm just guessing." At this moment, Luo Nan's mature behavior made Emochio overlook Luo Nan's age. He also forgot the so-called elder brother style that he had been trying to put on to comfort Luo Nan. Emochio unconsciously sighed. Actually, Emochio also felt quite wronged. He really didn't know the specifics of the situation. When it happened, he was chatting with Tianxi in Area C. By the time he received the news and rushed over, it was already too late. It seems like Mo Cheng's team was provoked when they were practicing. Both sides engaged in a virtual battle, and they fought for real. Players from both sides were forced to go offline due to excessive stimulation, and then it turned into a real fight. This wasn't a big deal. In competitive games, challenges and provocations were a part of the game. In the case of high degree of realism, it was common for hot-blooded young people to be unable to hold back their anger and turn virtual confrontations into real-life PK. Generally speaking, a large amusement park like Frost River Reality would always have corresponding control measures to prevent the situation from worsening. However, today was a strange day. When Emochio received the news and rushed over, the conflict suddenly intensified. Mo Tao, Mo Peng, and even Tianqi, who were not part of the team and did not really fight before, were all involved. It truly became a group fight. The scene of intense loss of control was captured by the public security monitoring system of the public place. It automatically alerted the police. Now Frost River Reality could no longer suppress the situation. Police machinery arrived on the scene, and anti-riot guns were pointed at the group of young people who were high. They instantly fell to the ground. In a few short minutes, they were all carried into police cars. Right now, the police cars were parked outside. Even the police were alarmed. It really was a big scene that people always did. Huang Bingjin's face first flashed in Luo Nan's mind, then Lu Tao's face. He felt that this method of borrowing force to fight force and easily extricate himself was more likely to be done by Lu Tao. Of course, this was just a guess. Emochio, on the other hand, had more ideas. He noticed that the people who provoked them looked like gangsters. He was afraid that there would be gangsters involved, so he first found a few of his companions who were scattered in the amusement park to ensure their safety. No matter what, this night was destined to be terrible. At this time, Emorue, Emohan, and Chen Xiaolin hurried over. The three girls had gone to play the Uncanny Valley game together. They were not with the main group, so they were able to avoid the conflict. But Chen Xiaolan, who was not a man, was taken into a police car because she participated in the gang fight. Emochio saw Chen Xiaolan approach and felt a headache. He did not know how to explain and comfort her. In the end, Emochio could not avoid explaining the situation to the girls. But the girls' reactions were more or less outside of his expectations. The relatively quiet Emorue was fine, but Emohan instantly jumped up. It must be that Huang Bingjin. That guy doesn't look like a good person at first glance. He found someone to retaliate against us. The first thing she thought of was that rotten person. It could be seen that Huang Bingjin's hugging action gave Emohan a huge psychological shadow. Chen Xiaolin appeared to be even calmer. She did not panic over her sister being detained. Instead, she asked, "Have you determined who is responsible? We only know that the other side provoked us first." Emochio was helpless when he said these words. "Which police station are you being taken to?" "This. Let me ask." Right now, Tianxi was in charge of the police station. When Emochio made the call to understand the information, he suddenly felt very embarrassed. His performance in this matter seemed to have been crushed by this 16 or 17-year-old girl, Chen Xiaolin. Embarrassment was embarrassment, but it did not delay Emochio from getting back the exact information. "It's the Fudong Sub-Bureau. They'll be taken care of nearby." Chen Xiaolin nodded and turned to Luonan. Leicester's father works in the city police station. He's quite familiar with them. Right, Shuele was rushing over right now. Luonan did not say anything. He just raised his hand toward Chen Xiaolin, indicating that the same matter did not need to be handled by two people. It was better to let these people who were more familiar with the police force communicate. However, Luonan shook his head in his mind when he saw Chen Xiaolin calmly mentioning Shuele. He did not believe that this exchange could redeem anything. Chen Xiaolin did not refuse. She walked to the side to talk to Shuele. Chapter 183. Lu Tao stood in front of the luxurious room in Area A, whose specifications were second only to the VIP floor. He hesitated for a moment before finally pushing the door open and entering. The room was dim. Practically all of the lights were off. The only place with a wall lamp was the resting area in the corner. There were two scantily clad women lying there in a daze. Their bodies were intertwined and they seemed to be asleep yet not asleep. Clearly, they had taken too many drugs. Seeing this scene, Lu Tao furrowed his brows. This idiot. Does he not want to mingle here anymore? Does he really think Yin Lo is some sort of madam who runs a place? Thinking about it again, Huang Bingjin not bringing the two women to the VIP area was still rational. Lu Tao tried to use this reason to convince himself. However, when he turned around and adapted to the dim light in the room, he was able to clearly distinguish the blurry silhouettes of the people in the operating area. He felt that he had gone blind. He should not have placed his hopes on this idiot. In the dim operating area, Huang Bingjin was wearing a tactical helmet. He waved his arms and his body staggered as he circled around the central area. Apart from that helmet, this bastard was completely naked. This guy is finished. Lu Tao had always believed that young masters like him, who were born with a golden spoon in their mouths, playing around with women, and looking for fun was nothing. However, there had to be a limit. In this already preposterous and unbridled world, a guy who continued to pursue extreme stimulation was destined to not live long. For someone like Huang Bingjin, who indulged in alcohol, drugs and women, he would reinvent every single one of them without restraint. Sooner or later, he would torment himself to death. In fact, he was more or less the same now. Ever since this guy joined some order in the Mystic Arts Research Society, he had forcefully found the meaning of eternity in his depraved and preposterous life. Normally he was still fine. However, once he got involved in alcohol and drugs, the circuitry of his brain would completely move towards an inhuman realm. If it wasn't for the Huang family's sponsorship of the Mystic Arts Research Society being extremely high, and if it wasn't for this fellow having an iron vote in the society, which was the crux of the bid for gear, Lu Tao wouldn't have gotten involved with this sort of person. Lu Tao was hesitating whether or not to greet this madman when Huang Bingjin let out an "ah" and knelt on the ground. First, he heavily kowtowed. Then he let out a strange laugh. The laughter squeezed out from the helmet was stifling and irritating. What a pervert! Lu Tao was badly frightened by this blow, and his whole body jumped a small step back. This chapter is not finished. Please continue. This chapter is not finished. That guy knelt on the ground and turned his head to look over. The pitch-black helmet covered his face, making him look comical and eerie. Taozi, your ideas aren't very good. These guys are all very arrogant. Ah. Lu Tao didn't understand what it meant. But then the operating area was illuminated by the light of a projector. The image displayed was the situation inside an escort police car. Lu Tao. And Tao's eyes, Lu was that Tao was to be in. These were all recorded by a certain gangster's camera, allowing Huang Bingjin to observe the entire process of the conflict. This method was learned from Li Xuecheng. However, Li Huang, but he to Li. Tao's Heelie's Ling Lu Tao thought of Luo Nan when he saw this situation. His mind was at a loss, but he answered carelessly. What you want is to separate them. Aren't these girls all alone now? What you do next is up to you. It has nothing to do with me. Though he said this, he was relieved to see that Huang Bingjin was not impatient to make a move and do something unbearable. Alone my ass. Their brother is like a shepherd dog. Hey, where are they? Huang Bingjin discovered that Lu Tao was the only one who came in. He was a bit dissatisfied. Lu Tao subconsciously rubbed his wristband. He laughed. They're all drunk. How can they come over? Who says we can't come over? The door behind him was slammed open. Hu Huaying and the others staggered in. She shouted. You two are sneaking around. What the hell are you doing? Fuck me. Lu Tao felt his entire body turn bad. The reason why he came over secretly behind Hu Huaying and the others was because he did not want the matter involving Luo Nan to be exposed. He wanted to give Lu Tao some room to maneuver. But this group of drunkards came in. How could he waver? Control the situation? Huang Bingjin suspiciously swept a glance at Lu Tao's face. He immediately became excited because of the sudden increase in the number of people in the room. He did not pursue the matter too much. It's good that you came. You bastards. You usually say that I'm researching those weird things. Now I'll let you experience what the true rulers of the future era are. Your bullshit things should have been swept into the trash a long time ago. Huang Bingjin completely ignored the hissing from Hu Huaying and the others. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. He had already entered a state of incoherent speech. He was dancing with joy. And over there. Those two over there. He was referring to the two drugged girls. The problem was that they were the ones who were truly drunk. How could they have any reaction? Huang Bingjin cursed and ran over by himself. Under the incredulous gazes of Lu Tao and the others, Huang Bingjin actually grabbed one girl with each arm and lifted the two girls over. He placed them on the left and right sides of the operating area. No way. Their combat strength is this strong after taking drugs? Lu Tao was truly stupefied. The two girls weighed 180 pounds each. They were also in a semi-conscious state. They simply didn't know how to cooperate, so they could only be heavier. But Huang Bingjin, this weak chicken, was actually able to forcefully grab one girl with each hand. If he had this kind of strength when he clashed with Luo Nan's group, how could he have been in such a difficult situation? At the same time, Lu Tao also noticed that Huang Bingjin was quite particular when he placed the two girls. He placed them in a diagonal position. He absolutely did not place them carelessly. Huang Bingjin's actions were so obvious that Hu Huaying and the other drunkards could see it. Someone laughed. Oh ho! What's up? You want to play a ritual? How come I heard that a certain person can't even draw a complete magical spell, even though he's been in the guild for so many years? Layman, shut your mouths. In this era, How stupid is it to play with that one stroke at a time? This is enough for me. Huang Bingjin waved his hand and erased the video from the police car. He then snapped his fingers, and an enormous projection covered the operating area in an instant. Triangles, pentagrams, hexagrams, circles, and all sorts of mysterious and unfathomable symbols pieced together to form a three-dimensional diagram. It was like an enormous multi-layered cake, covering everyone within in an instant. Snow white, deep blue, dark green, dark gold, and all sorts of other colors were reflected in front of everyone's eyes. Lu Tao saw a gear-like diagram in front of him. It was pieced together and rotated, giving him an indescribable feeling. What are you playing at? The dusky room suddenly lit up with such an intense light. It was very dazzling to Hu Huaying's eyes. He blinked and squinted his drunken eyes. He was a bit at a loss. Playing? Fine. Let's just take it as playing. Let's play a little swap experiment to prepare for the future holy swap. Huang Bingjin took off his helmet, revealing a face suffused with a dark red halo. This color even seeped into his pupils, mixing together with the surrounding blurry colors of light. It was mottled and bewitching. Lu Tao shivered when he saw this pair of eyes. This mottling was Luonan's style. Chapter 184. The instant of oppression caused Lu Tao's mind to go blank for a period of time. During this time, his fingertip, which had been pressed against his wristband, instinctively made a move. The wristband vibrated soundlessly, starting the recording function. When Lu Tao regained his senses, he already didn't want to change anything. At this time, he saw Huang Bingjin circling around the magical projection array, moving in a crooked circle. He even reached out to touch those illusory lines and structures, as if caressing the tender skin of a beauty. His face was filled with intoxication. Look, this is the holy space. The others in the room were dumbfounded. They couldn't keep up with this madman's train of thought. Huang Bingjin was proud of these people's performance, but at the same time, he felt a little disappointed. For this reason, he was willing to waste his breath to explain to these ignorant people. Do you know how it is built? Do you know what it is used for? Regardless of whether or not the others wanted to hear, Huang Bingjin continued to dance. The holy space is a mysterious domain that realizes exchange. Here, you can give up one thing and use it to exchange for another thing of equal value. This way, you can exchange for what you need and obtain the most perfect, most exquisite balance in the universe. Thanks to the blessing of the technological era, we only need one thing to build such a wonderful domain. What is it? What is it? Huang Bingjin's finger pointed at Hu Huaying, Lu Tao, and the others, not letting a single one go. But no one interacted with him. Everyone was still in a state of confusion. Incorrigible idiots. Are you talking about magical arrays? Aha, wrong, it's seeds. Seeds. Huang Bingjin himself could have fun, but Hu Huaying and the others felt like they were watching an absurd play. Moreover, they were forcefully pulled onto the stage, awkwardly participating in it. Huang Bingjin didn't have the slightest awareness of this. We only need to obtain a seed, and we can use it as a foundation, using a fixed system mold, to germinate and build a holy space to carry the holy object. Where does the seed come from? Taoster, you must know. He was actually called out. Lu Tao really wanted to slap Huang Bingjin's face to see if he could wake this guy up. But facing Huang Bingjin's eyes, he really was a little scared. He could only force a smile. I couldn't guess it at first. Stupid, you've done a great service by plucking this seed. Huang Bingjin was like a passionate conductor. With a wave of his arm, there was a shadow in front of him. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. It was clearly shown that the gangsters had deliberately provoked and triggered a group fight. His hand swept and clenched in the projection, as if he was grabbing something out of thin air. Then he waved his fist at Lu Tao. Lu Tao could roughly guess what Huang Bingjin meant. The so-called seed was obtained from the group fight just now. What the hell is this? Lu Tao had to admit that his brain was not enough. His brain must have been fried by the drug. What the hell are you guys doing? Even if Hu Huaying was a little drunk, he was starting to feel that something was wrong. He turned his gaze towards Lu Tao. In his opinion, Lu Tao, who had arrived earlier, was obviously easier to communicate with and should know more. Lu Tao hesitated for a moment. He still didn't want to explain too clearly. He only vaguely said, "He just suffered a loss at the hands of a group of people. He's not happy in his heart. I don't know what he's thinking." "He suffered a loss? If you've suffered a loss, then get it back. What are you doing here? Did you meet someone you can't afford to offend?" This shouldn't be the case. At least in Huang Bingzhen's mind, he had no concept of Luonan, the bomb. Only the heavens knew that there were simple and direct methods. Why did he have to do this? Then again, if he was able to understand Huang Bingzhen's thoughts, then wouldn't he be a madman? Lu Tao spread his hands with a helpless expression. Unable to get an answer from him, Hu Huaying staggered forward to pull Huang Bingzhen's shoulder. "Brother Huang, don't be so mysterious. If you have something to say, then say it. If you have something to say, then do it." Fuck. Hu Huaying moved closer with good intentions, but he was pushed away by Huang Bingzhen. How could he maintain his balance right now? He immediately sat on the ground, stunned on the spot. "Hey Huang Bingzhen. You're no fun like this." The other drunkard had a good relationship with Hu Huaying. He immediately wanted to stick up for Hu Huaying, but Huang Bingzhen's mottled demonic pupils turned to stare at his face in the next moment. Silence. Even though the experiment is small, it's still sacred. You were clearly the most noisy one just now. On the ground, Hu Huaying struggled to crawl up. He shouted, "This guy drank too much. Grab him. Wake him up." These people's family backgrounds were similar, but Frost River reality could barely be considered Hu Huaying's territory. He was the landlord, so they would listen to him. The drunkards immediately rubbed their fists and palms together. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. He saw an opportunity and charged forward with a howl. Lu Tao hesitated for a moment before following. Even though Huang Bingzhen's strength was extraordinarily great, there was a limit to it. He could not resist the combined strength of these people. His 5 limbs hung in the air. His 2 legs kicked wildly, and there was no place for him to exert his strength. His eyes were about to bleed. In the end, he had no other choice. He shouted with a hoarse voice, "Get the holy object! Get the holy object!" This group of people didn't care about the holy object. What mattered was making this kid sober up. Hu Huaying turned his head to look around. "Do you have any inhibitors? This kid doesn't want to live." "Ha!" Hu Huaying's voice suddenly cut off. Lu Tao was the most sensitive, so he turned his head upon hearing the sound. Lu Tao saw the center of the so-called magic array. Marvelous black and white lines crisscrossed and weaved. They combined and constructed together, gradually forming a classical hanging scale that was half a person's height. The black and white plates were placed on one side. The frame in the center presented a smooth and contrasting arc. In the center, there was a sculpture that looked like a Western crown. It was unknown what flower it was made of. 8 sharp hollow leaves spread out in a ring shape, and there were 6 gems arranged in 2 rows at the center of the crown. The gems were of different colors, but the hue was rather dark. The design looked strange and gorgeous. At this moment, the black and white plates were placed on one side. Chains of the same color were divided into 3 strands that hung them up. They even swayed slightly as if they were real. "I think I've heard of this before." Hu Huaying scratched his head. "It's the scales of truth." Lu Tao vaguely knew a little about this so-called holy object. It was not only very influential within the Mystic Arts Research Society, but it was also circulated among the wealthy circles of Xia City. It was just that Lu Tao had no interest in this sort of mysterious thing. He had never seriously understood it. Now it seemed that he had underestimated it in the past. In any case, it had some ability to turn a normal person into a retard. Huang Bingzhen became even crazier when he saw the scales of truth appear. He struggled as he screamed, "The world is fair. The truth is just. The daily exchange of this round's holy oracle's item has been fulfilled. I request an exchange." "Exchange? Calm down. Oh my God." One of the drunkards slapped Huang Bingzhen's cheeks with all his might, but he was bitten by this fellow. The drunkard let out a blood-curdling scream and saw blood. Just as the drunkard was cursing out loud, his body inexplicably shook. He lowered his head to look, and saw a sharp appendage protruding from his chest. It was hard to tell if it was real or illusory. Chapter 185. The order in the reception hall of Frost River reality grew more and more chaotic. Many people were attracted by the arrival of the police. The effects of the brawl were fermenting. At this time, Frost River reality was also having a headache. The person in charge was constantly negotiating with the police, hoping that the police would quickly take away all of the brawlers and put an end to the matter. However, the police still needed to conduct some on-site investigations, including Tianxi. The petite girl had been trying to communicate with the police. The three parties restrained each other, and for a while, they were in a deadlock. Luonan and the others saw this scene when they walked out the door. Chun Xiaolin had just finished communicating with Shuelei and walked over to his side. Her expression was a little strange. Leister contacted his father. It seems that his uncle is on duty tonight. He just received a mission and went out. He's here. Such a coincidence? Luonan was astonished. He also found it very strange. His father is a special police officer, right? He's involved in this sort of public security issue? It seems like after the explosion in the R&D district, it has been in a state of alert. All the security issues in the central city have been upgraded. On the side, Emochio had a strange feeling. It was good to be able to find a solution to the problem, but the current situation made him feel a little awkward. He noticed that Chun Xiaolin, this mellow and precocious girl, had been discussing matters with Luonan from beginning to end after proposing the solution. She had placed him, the person with the most experience and age, to the side. Was it because they were familiar with each other? Chun Xiaolin had no time to care about Emochio's fragile heart. Her last encounter at the Limestone Water Village pub left a serious shadow in her heart, but it also made her understand that Luonan's identity was absolutely not as simple as an ordinary high school freshman. Luonan had taken that intense and terrifying scene as a matter of course, let alone now? Naturally, she had to find the person who could handle it the most. As Chun Xiaolin spoke, she shifted her gaze and glanced at several burly SWAT officers wearing exoskeleton armors outside the door. However, all the SWAT officers were wearing fully enclosed tactical helmets, and there was no obvious police rank logo on their armor. For a moment, she could not tell which one was Shuelei's father, or if he was still at the scene in Area A. Luonan didn't deliberately search for them. If they were willing to help, they would certainly contact them. Otherwise, what would be the point of finding them? He roughly observed the situation and walked in the direction of the police car to check on Mo Peng and the others. No matter how he looked at it, this group fight was a little strange. He wanted to understand it further. But when he was 7 or 8 steps away from the police car, he was stopped by a cold metal arm. The one who stopped him was a special police officer. He was nearly 2 meters tall, and he was looking down at him with a pitch-black visor. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. After that, he didn't give off a friendly vibe. The area ahead is controlled. Do not approach. The voice of the special police came from behind the helmet. Luonan did his best to put on a childish expression that matched his age. Officer, my brother is inside. I came with him. Is that so? The SWAT officer who was blocking the road gestured behind him. Immediately, one of his comrades came over and asked, Captain? Captain? Luonan was stupefied for a moment, but the special police officer blocking the road had already instructed. Give the hospital a heads up. Let that group of people first take a urine sample in preparation for a drug test. Their emotions are too agitated. It might be the effect of the drug. How did he make that connection? Luonan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was baffled, but soon his mind stirred. His mental senses cut into the visor to confirm. Almost at the same time, the SWAT officer took off his helmet, revealing a square, middle-aged man's face. You're Luonan. Officer Shui. Uncle? Though the tone was quite different, the certainty and judgment within were completely the same. Luonan was a bit embarrassed. The police officer in front of him was none other than Officer Shui, who had personally arrested Xie Junping last week, due to the illegal drugs in his phantom flying car. That was the first time Luo Nan had been arrested. It was impossible to not have a deep impression of him. He still remembered this person's name. It was Xue Weiluan. The word Xue couldn't be written twice in a single stroke. Plus, the location and position all matched. Luo Nan was certain that this tall and sturdy police officer was Xue Lei's father. He was also the target of their assistance. So Xia City really was quite small. Luo Nan had a strong first impression. He was able to find many similarities between Officer Xue and Xue Lei when he looked at him again. This could be used as verification. However, the other impression of Officer Xue didn't seem to have any positive effects. Xue Weiluan furrowed his brows and stared at Luo Nan. His gaze was like looking at a criminal suspect who had escaped by a fluke. That day, Luo Nan was silent and taciturn after being controlled. His rigid and uncooperative appearance left a deep impression on Xue Weiluan. Now Luo Nan looked a bit more cheerful, but it was limited. Leister said that you're a good friend of his. How long have you known each other? Just last week. Luo Nan felt that it was very likely that he would be interrogated by this Officer Xue. This was to prevent Xue Lei from mistakenly making friends with criminals. His wristband vibrated just as he was having a headache. He immediately whispered an apology and looked at the message on his wristband to alleviate the awkward and tense situation. The message unexpectedly came from Lu Tao, but it wasn't an instant message. Instead, it was an audio file. What the hell is this fellow up to? This chapter has yet to end. Please turn the page. Luo Nan subconsciously opened the audio file, and an extremely exaggerated voice immediately came out. The holy space is a mysterious domain that can realize displacement. What followed was this voice's unceasing lecture. Magical spells, seeds, holy objects, and other special terms popped out one after another. Hu Huaying and Lu Tao's conversation was mixed in the middle. From this, Luo Nan could determine that this neurotic lecture came from Huang Bingjin. Just as Luo Nan came to a conclusion, a commotion arose in the recording. After a series of chaos, an extremely sensitive term suddenly jumped out. The scales of truth? Luo Nan was suddenly agitated. Then he heard the other side say things like, the fairness of the world, the justice of truth. The answer was already clear. The order of justice. With such a high profile, the definition of a secret order was a bit unworthy of the name. And at this time, Luo Nan finally discovered that he had been listening to the recording for too long. Xue Weiluan didn't really care. On the contrary, he was listening very seriously and openly. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed. Xue Weiluan wasn't an ability user. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have been allowed to hear this information. The next few seconds were all filled with Huang Bingjin's crazed shouts of displacement. Displacement. Luo Nan wanted to transfer it to his internal headphones and play it. But at this time, a sharp voice that had changed its tone due to fear suppressed everything. Spider. Spider? Luo Nan's thoughts had deviated a bit in an instant, but they were forcefully pulled back. The recording came to an abrupt end at this time. Luo Nan's expression turned very ugly. He immediately called Lu Tao, but no one picked up for a long time. Hu Huaying followed, and the same thing happened. Luo Nan couldn't stop while he was on the phone. He turned around and walked inside. Xue Weiluan's expression had changed a long time ago. He saw Luo Nan walk back and wanted to grab him, but his hand hesitated halfway. He didn't exert force and instead followed Luo Nan with large strides. I've been pretending to be a dead dog for several days. The main reason is that I'm busy to death in class. The pace of updates is a complete mess. I don't have the face to say much. Now that I'm busy with the project, I don't really want to become a dead dog, so I'll make my stance clear. During the double monthly vote period, the atmosphere of the event wasn't lively due to my actions of pretending to be dead. Even though I have the strong support of many friends, it's true that I didn't fulfill my obligations. How about this? No matter what the monthly vote results are, I will first recognize the 50 chapters of the monthly vote and add chapters. In other words, even if I don't reach 5,000 monthly votes, I will guarantee the 50 chapters of the monthly vote. Starting tomorrow, I will guarantee 3 chapters every day. I will gradually adjust it to 4 chapters. Of course, if fellow readers are willing to break through the 5,000 vote mark, I will accept it. I'm currently losing weight. Thank you. Chapter 186. Luonen quickly passed through the reception hall and headed in the direction of the VIP elevator. On the way, he used the hexa ear to enter the special channel of the society regarding the human-faced arachnid and reported the situation. There were still many reports related to the human-faced arachnid in Xia City in the past week. But as one of the 4 psychics in Xia City, Luonan had special privileges within the society. He Yuan's call came in just as the report ended. Mr. Luo, I have already assigned people to rush over according to the location information you have shared. The nearest person can arrive in 5 minutes. Please stay put and avoid direct contact with the target as much as possible. I will arrive in around 30 minutes. I am confirming the level of the situation. Right now, it is still a guess and not an actual confirmation. Luonen had already learned a few specialized terms. He spoke one set after another. Your current physical condition is not suitable for this mission. Therefore, please ensure your own safety as your #1 priority. I understand. I have a senior special police officer by my side. Luonen had already entered the VIP elevator as he spoke. This time he did not have Bai Xingyan's temporary privileges, but there were no problems. It seemed that Frost River Reality had increased the level of his account. It seemed that Hu Huaying's reputation was quite useful here. She had thought things through quite thoroughly. Luonen did not want to see anything happen to Hu Huaying. Shui Weiluan silently followed him into the elevator. His identity as a police officer gave him the authority to freely enter and exit the police area. The 2 locked gazes in the enclosed elevator. They wanted to speak, but the elevator had already stopped at the VIP floor before they could speak. The elevator door opened, and the first thing Luonan saw were the 2 guides with long hair and short hair. The 2 were baffled to see Luonan return. Mr. Luo? Did you forget to bring? The 2 guides quickly saw the tall and sturdy officer Shui behind Luonan. They immediately knew that something was wrong and were speechless for a time. Luonan did not care about what they were thinking. He said directly, "Is Senior Hu and the others still in that room?" The 2 guides looked at each other and responded with some hesitation. "Mr. Hu and his friends are already downstairs." "Downstairs? I didn't see them." Luonan estimated that the incident happened at least 10 minutes ago. He was still at the guide desk in the lobby. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. However, that place wasn't far from the VIP elevator. With such a large group of drunkards passing by, he should have at least sensed it. They took another elevator that went straight to Area A. Area A. Luonan muttered to himself for a bit, then he said, "Where's Huang Bingjin's room? Do you know this person?" "Mr. Huang?" From the looks of it, the guides knew who he was. Mr. Huang didn't come to the VIP area today. What about Area A? Area A also has private rooms, right? Can you help me check? The 2 guides had awkward expressions on their faces, especially when they saw the big guy behind Luonan. The 2 communicated for a bit, but they connected another call, asking Luonan to connect. "Hello, Mr. Luo, I mean Luo. Manager Yin?" Luonan didn't think that the 2 guides would directly invite her out, but this was within reason. Thinking about Yin Li's special identity, he couldn't help but consider 2 more layers. Yin Li's attitude was very calm. "I'm at Sky Capital Water Village right now. I don't understand the situation over there. Could Mr. Luo explain it to me?" Luonan was speechless for a time. Was he going to say, "I discovered traces of the Order of Justice and the human-faced arachnid in your territory, and your Blood Flame Order needs to cooperate and find them?" The Blood Flame Order and the Order of Justice looked different, but Luonan had observed the Blood Flame Order from the perspective of the Wraith sign for a week. He couldn't help but feel a bit of a headache. Inla didn't receive an immediate response from him, but she wasn't impatient. She spoke in a leisurely manner. "If Mr. Luo has any urgent questions, our store has a professional team that specializes in dealing with troublesome matters. Mr. Luo can inform us of the relevant situation. I believe that we will be able to deal with it appropriately." Luonan knew that Inla wanted to deal with him. Right when he was pondering how to speak, Officer Shui pressed down on his arm, and inserted himself into the call. Hello, Managerine. I'm Captain Xue Weiluan of the Special Police Brigade directly under the Xia City Police Department. My police number and relevant proof can be sent to you via the internet. Our department is currently dealing with a vicious conflict that occurred in your territory. We suspect that this incident is related to the guest with the surname Huang. We hope that you can cooperate with the police and open up the relevant authority to facilitate the police's emergency response. Thank you for your cooperation. It was rare for Xue Weiluan to speak such a long sentence in a single breath. The unyielding will within his words was clear and discernible. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Xue Weiluan was clearly silent for a moment before he responded. We fully support the work of the police. The call was then hung up. Luo Nan understood that he had thoroughly offended Yin Le this time. However, he approved of Xue Weiluan's swift and decisive approach. The two didn't delay any longer. They followed the instructions of the two guides and took a direct elevator to enter Area A, where the luxury room was located. Under Xue Weiluan's orders, the police had already taken over the surveillance system of Frost River Reality in a short minute. They quickly locked onto their target. By the time Luo Nan and Xue Weiluan arrived outside the luxury room, there were already 5 or 6 special police officers in place. They separated the surrounding guests who were watching the show, accumulating power and waiting to take action. They could break down the door at any time. Luo Nan cursed to himself when he saw this situation. If it really was a situation related to the human-faced arachnid, then these special police officers, who were just a bit stronger than ordinary people, wearing exoskeleton armors, wouldn't be of any use. Especially Xue Weiluan. How could Luo Nan watch as Xue Lei's father face danger in front of him? Luo Nan's body unconsciously squeezed forward, but he was stopped by Xue Weiluan. Then a special police officer forcefully pressed Luo Nan outside the control line. As Luo Nan struggled, he saw the special police officer in front of him make a few unintelligible gestures to Xue Weiluan. Xue Weiluan immediately gave the order to break through. In the next moment, the door to the luxury room was pushed open and several special police officers poured in. Luo Nan glared at the special police officer behind him. While the officer was stunned, Luo Nan broke free from the restraint and entered the room. Xue Weiluan frowned when he saw Luo Nan rush in. He didn't say anything about Luo Nan's actions. He just asked, "Take a look. Are they all here?" Actually, Luo Nan didn't need to look. He had already used his mental senses to scan the situation inside the room when he was outside. He had an idea of what was going on. Hu Huaying, Lu Tao, Huang Bingjin, 3 other drunkards, and the 2 women he didn't expect to see. He nodded. He didn't say anything definite. Everyone I know is here. Luo Nan's mental senses continued to search endlessly as he spoke. However, he couldn't find anything else in this pitch-black room. The most crucial human-faced arachnid was gone. The holy space and the scales of truth were all gone. There were only 8 people in deep comas. Chapter 187. Xue Weiluan signaled his underlings to turn on the lights. His eyebrows furrowed when he heard Luo Nan respond so quickly. You can see. Only now did Luo Nan discover that he was used to the convenience of mental clairvoyance. He had been too quick with his words. He had actually answered Xue Weiluan's question with the lights in the operating area completely out. It must be known that these special police officers were all equipped with tactical helmets with night vision capabilities. Luo Nan had no equipment on him at all. My eyesight is pretty good. Cough cough. Luo Nan's face was slightly hot. He just so happened to feel the urge to cough, so he took the opportunity to forcefully thicken his skin and forcefully evade this question. But this also gave him a few hints. Uncle Xue, the operating area's lights were turned off. There's a high chance that the projector was turned on. Did you see it when you came in? No. Xue Weiluan gave a simple response, but he felt that it was rather absurd. This 15 or 16-year-old kid was acting far too calm. He was simply pouring baskets of groundless suspicion onto his own head. But this kid didn't look stupid. This veteran special police officer, who was over 50 years old, couldn't help but feel a bit emotional. Youngsters these days are much more capable than we were back in the day. His words contained a bit of a warning. In the end, he couldn't avoid his own son. Plus, Luo Nan's behavior from the beginning until now didn't arouse any ill will from him. At the very least, Luo Nan wasn't a hopeless wastrel. Luo Nan didn't pay attention to Shui Weiluan's good intentions. His mental senses covered the entire luxurious room, constantly gathering information. Of course, he also paid attention to Hu Huaying and the other unconscious people. First, he confirmed that their lives weren't in danger. However, their current state was indeed quite odd. Under the illumination of the lights that had just been turned on, 2 women could be seen in disheveled clothing among the 8 people. But they were quite far away, practically at the edge of the operating area. In the center, 6 big men were squeezed together. Huang Bingjin was completely naked from head to toe. Hu Huaying, Lu Tao and the others were currently surrounding him in the middle. Their arms and legs were still entangled with each other. Combined with the recording, one could roughly guess that Hu Huaying and the others had Huang Bingjin, who had overdosed on drugs, under control at the time of the incident. But because of a sudden incident, everyone collapsed in a short amount of time. Most of them had more or less expressions of fear on their faces. They didn't stop even though they were unconscious. It was as if they had fallen into a nightmare. The only exception was Huang Bingjin. This guy. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. His face was buried in the crowd. Others couldn't see him clearly, but he couldn't hide from Luo Nan, who relied on his mental senses. It could be seen that Huang Bingjin's expression was very relaxed, as if he was sleeping normally. Was this a symptom of taking too much drugs? Luo Nan increased the precision of his mental senses appropriately. He observed the breathing, the pulse, the twitching of the eyelids, and other external indicators. He had some faint guesses in his mind, but he wasn't 100% certain. He had to go forward and take a closer look. Officer Shui stretched out his arm to stop him. Don't destroy the scene. Wait for the investigators. Luo Nan tried to play dumb. Uncle Shui, aren't you guys the same? We are the special police. We only care about the operation. Oh, but are they all right? I've already called an ambulance. I'll also do a drug test. Luo Nan was a bit helpless. It looked like this Uncle Shui had equated him with psychotropic drugs. He couldn't blame Uncle Shui for thinking this way. Not to mention Huang Bingjin, who was buried in the crowd. The 2 scantily clad girls clearly showed signs of taking too much drugs. Then again, the appearance of the 2 girls made Luo Nan even more certain of his previous judgment. This was the natural reaction of taking too much drugs. Huang Bingjin was like this. There was a problem no matter how he looked at it, and it was a very familiar problem. A shallow and serene coma. Luo Nan was the one who encountered this problem last time. Luo Nan muttered to himself for a moment. Then he suddenly complained to Shui Weiluan. Uncle, this is the person in the middle. He had a conflict with us over an hour ago. Wait for the people from the public security department to come before you say that. Shui Weiluan grunted, but then he asked a question. Aren't they your friends? There's only one that counts as a friend. Luo Nan pointed at Hu Huaying's position. Then he tilted his finger and pointed at the middle position. As for this person, Huang Bingjin, young Master Huang, he's out of my league. Shui Weiluan's brows furrowed behind his helmet. Was it an illusion? He felt that there was a subtle change in Luo Nan's way of speaking, but he was unable to discern the specifics. Huang Bingjin. That's right. Huang Bingjin. He's the famous second-generation rich kid of our school. He's a good-for-nothing rotten person. Shui Weiluan shook his head. It's useless for you to say these words to me. I know. I wasn't saying it to you in the first place. Luo Nan narrowed his eyes slightly. The 2 words Huang Bingjin that came out of his mouth were fine on the material plane. The sound waves did not travel more than a few meters in the air before they began to dissipate. But this chapter has yet to end. Please turn the page. However, the corresponding information was under Luo Nan's intentional control. It was urged by his soul strength to rapidly spread out on the mental plane. In the blink of an eye, it exceeded the range of his senses. He had learned this technique from Mo Luan of the Blood Flame Order a few days ago. Mo Luon had used this method to summon the human-faced arachnid from a long distance. In terms of subtlety and concealment, Mo Luon was 100 times stronger than the current Luo Nan. But at this very moment, Luo Nan did not know what concealment was. He wanted this sort of diffuse effect. Now he just needed to see how the response was. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. His ears suddenly trembled slightly. A sharp and unfriendly voice cut in. "What the hell are you yelling for? You're bragging that you're mentally enhanced? Right now half of Xia City can hear you." The voice was familiar, but it wasn't particularly familiar. Luo Nan was stunned for a moment before realizing that the other party was speaking through the Hexaear's psychic wave network. Luo Nan's mind shifted a bit, and he saw an encrypted channel specially set up for this operation. A cat's eye avatar had just lit up, announcing his arrival. Luo Nan finally matched his memories. Due to some reason, he had some inexplicable and bizarre thoughts. He only responded after 2 seconds had passed. "Cat's eye?" Luo Nan's mind suddenly stirred before his voice fell. There was a clear and powerful reaction. It charged into the range of his senses in an extremely crude manner. How far could a distance of 10 meters be? In the blink of an eye, an incorporeal shadow seeped in from the other side of the room's wall. Luo Nan was facing Xue Weiluan directly at this time. He looked away from the angle of his line of sight, but under the clairvoyance of his mental senses, he was able to see what was happening over there as clearly as if he was seeing it with his own eyes. Even though the changes occurred on the mental plane, which was hard for ordinary people to see with their eyes, the incorporeal shadow had yet to completely penetrate through. But the 6 heterochromatic pupils and the ugly mandibles had already joined together to form the image of a malevolent spider. Then there were the 4 pairs of arthropod legs that waved about endlessly. They waved about a bit excessively and occasionally fought with themselves. They stirred up minute fluctuations on the mental plane that made people feel uneasy. However, the abdomen that should have been round and plump had turned into a flat human chest and abdomen structure. The outline of a human's legs and feet was still visible behind it, but most of it was trapped within the dark mist of chaos. It looked warped and deformed. This sort of image was like that of an enormous spider. Half of its body had merged into the back of a human. Its heavy weight had crushed the human spine, turning an ordinary person into a crooked and mutated monster. Human-faced arachnid. At least that was what it looked like on the surface. Chapter 188. Luo Nan's heart thumped twice as he watched the human-faced arachnid charge in. He was truly a bit flabbergasted. He had used his soul power to greet Huang Bingzhen, but what he wanted to summon was only Huang Bingzhen, whose soul seemed to have left his body. After all, the current Huang Bingzhen was almost exactly the same as when he was in a light coma, but his soul had actually left his body. He guessed that Huang Bingzhen had obtained the power to leave his body through special means such as the Order of Justice's holy space or holy substitution. From Luo Nan's experience, this was the first time he left his body. If he didn't have any external driving force, he would need to carefully ponder over how to move. This fellow shouldn't be able to run far. Through today's conflict with Huang Bingzhen, and with reference to Lu Tao's recording, this person's personality was already relatively clear. Phrases such as fierce on the outside but weak on the inside, bullying the weak and fearing the strong, getting carried away, and so on were simply designed for this person. Perhaps this person had seen the arrival of the City Police Department's special forces, and was still not used to the invisibility of the soul, so he was so scared that he hid. However, it must be known that Frost River reality was densely packed with people. As long as Huang Bingzhen was not an idiot, he would certainly be able to quickly discover the wonders of the out-of-body state. His self-confidence should have swelled. At this time, through some provocation, it was quite possible to lure this guy back. The course of events was very similar to Luo Nan's reasoning, but the degree of danger was on a completely different order of magnitude. Luo Nan entered the highest state of alert in an instant. He followed the principles set by the society and tossed out the words, "The human-faced arachnid has appeared. Draw close to me," into the encrypted channel. He couldn't care less about the pressure his soul strength exerted on his body. The heavily chained crow swung out and coiled around his body, preparing for a fierce battle. What's wrong? Xue Weiluan asked. The human-faced arachnid and the heavily chained crow were existences on the mental plane. Xue Weiluan was unable to see them. However, Luo Nan's suddenly tense body language could not be hidden from him. Luo Nan turned his head at this time to face the empty right wall. His expression was grim, as if a storm was brewing. Luo Nan was reminded by Xue Weiluan. He thought of the special forces in the room and cursed to himself. Oh no! He didn't care about arousing suspicion. He raised his voice and shouted, "There's something wrong with the room. Get out!" As he spoke, Luo Nan ignored the enormous difference in their sizes. He forcefully reached out to grab Xue Weiluan's arm, which was wrapped in metal armor. He wanted to pull Xue Weiluan outside. But if this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. It didn't budge at all. Whether it was Xue Weiluan or his subordinates, they were all confused by Luo Nan's crazy reaction. They didn't react in the first instance. And at this time, the human-faced arachnid that had completely penetrated through the wall was already within reach. Sure enough, this fellow had made Luo Nan his #1 target. Its 6 corporeal eyes locked onto Luo Nan's position. It was like a raging bull as it charged over. Its 8 legs looked as sharp as blades as they streaked through the air, slicing at Luo Nan's face. What? Practically all of Luo Nan's energy was focused on defending against the siege hammer that could strike at any time when he faced the human-faced arachnid. He actually forgot to move when facing this attack that completely exceeded his imagination. Idiot! A figure that was as robust as a female leopard forced its way through the entrance of the private room. She pierced in between 2 majestic special police officers. Her speed increased once more, and she leaped several meters in a single leap. She actually forcefully knocked Luo Nan flying in the moment of imminent peril, narrowly avoiding the sharp edge of the long limbs. However, Luo Nan's eyes were about to split open when he was thrown away. This was because his mental senses had captured everything clearly. The sharp long limbs didn't cut through Luo Nan. Instead, they took advantage of the situation and pierced through Xue Weiluan's chest. They cut through the bottom of the tactical helmet and came out from the top of the right side of Xue Weiluan's skull. Luo Nan fell to the ground at this time. His entire spine was numb from the collision. He slid back 2 to 3 meters, and only stopped when he reached the edge of the operating area. He nearly lost his breath, but he climbed up with all his might. Uncle Xue. Huh. Whether it was the naked eye or the clairvoyance of his mental senses, Xue Weiluan was still standing there perfectly fine. His helmet's visor was facing Luo Nan's position. He looked a bit stiff, but this was because of the absurd scene before his eyes. Nothing had happened to Xue Weiluan himself. As for the human-faced arachnid that had executed the raging bull charge and the blade cleave, it was unable to stop in time. It charged straight to the edge of the room before turning its body around. It looked at the results of its own battle, looking a bit stupefied. Luo Nan sat on the ground and blinked his eyes. His mind was a bit stupefied for a time. Cat Eyes wore baggy camouflage pants and a flat-brimmed hat on her head not too far away from him. She looked like she had just come down from a street dance. She did a graceful roll and stood up. But she was stupefied for a time when faced with the current situation. You guys. It was as if Xue Weiluan was watching an absurd play. But in that instant, the female street dancer before his eyes appeared. This chapter has yet to end. Please turn the page. He absolutely didn't dare to treat her lightly due to her astonishing skills. Most of the special police officers inside and outside the room came back to their senses at this time. They pulled out their guns one after another and pointed at the female street dancer who had suddenly barged in. Some even pointed at Luo Nan. This was the only threat they could feel. Put your guns away. Xue Weiluan gave the order and then asked, Luo Nan, what the hell are you guys doing? Luo Nan didn't know how to explain for a time. His gaze shifted to the edge of the room where the human-faced arachnid was. His mental senses firmly locked onto the adversary. After a few probing attempts, he couldn't help but scratch his head. Looking at the aggressive appearance of the human-faced arachnid, Luo Nan practically believed that it was a tall and long human-faced arachnid. It had already materialized from incorporeal, cut into the material plane, and wanted to behead him directly. But reality proved that this wasn't the case. The power level of this human-faced arachnid was actually quite ordinary. It couldn't even compare to the burning wraith that Luo Nan had first encountered on the warship. Then in the end, just how stupid would it be to abandon its most advantageous ability, and attempt to use its incorporeal form to break through the material plane, and use physical attacks to solve its problems? In reality, this fellow had always been trying to interfere with the material plane from the mental plane up until now. It was like an inflated balloon that was forcefully pressed down into the water. Other than making it more eye-catching, this way of doing things had no other effect. Luo Nan finally understood why the image of this human-faced arachnid was so clear. This fellow had placed the majority of its power in this fellow had placed most of its power on the mental interfering with the material plane. The closer the human-faced arachnid was to the material plane, the higher the probability of it being sensed by others. Cat Eyes had been unable to see the human-faced arachnid during their last operation, but when she performed the rescue just now, her judgment of its position and timing proved that she could already do it. This change had nothing to do with whether or not her abilities had improved. It was only related to the difference in her goals. The human-faced arachnid before her was clearly different from its own kind. The lighting in the room suddenly brightened right as Luo Nan was thinking. The projector in the operating area activated automatically without anyone controlling it. It projected a multicolored wave of light into this area. Chapter 189. There seemed to be some problems with the projector. The light it projected did not display a concrete image. Instead, it was like a mottled haze of light that covered the operating area. It also enveloped Luo Nan, Cat Eyes, Shui Weiluan, and 6 other people, as well as the 8 unconscious bodies. The sudden change in lighting attracted everyone's gazes. But the one who made the most intense reaction was the stupid crying human-faced arachnid. As soon as the light rays interweaved, it charged forward again. This time, it didn't target anyone but directly charged into the spreading light fog. Then it hid itself in the colorful light. There was no doubt that this projected haze was a cover for the human-faced arachnid. Cat Eyes softly cried out, "Oh no!" to an ability user like her who lived off of perception. Locking onto a target was the greatest source of security. She had been extremely stifled during the human-faced arachnid hunting operation last time. Now that she had made progress with great difficulty, how could she have imagined that all her previous efforts would go to waste? But in the end, Cat Eyes was an awakened with rich experience. Her train of thought changed, and her gaze fell upon the projector that created the mottled fog. Taking drastic measures was a good choice. All of you back out. What's going on with the system? Shui Weiluan spoke loudly. The first part of his speech was directed at the other people in the room, telling them to leave the projection area. The second part of his speech was directed at the technicians who were monitoring the operation of the room system. He did not like this change. It made him feel that the situation was not completely under the control of the police. Cat Eyes was just about to make her move when she heard Shui Weiluan's order. She snorted and said, "Idiot." Luo Nan coughed as he crawled up. He wanted to defend Shui Weiluan. He doesn't know. I said you are an idiot. Luo Nan was simply baffled. Did I provoke you? However, on second thought, it was possible. It must be known that this person had left an image in the format pyramid. Even those on the student level could not be considered true believers. For instance, Xie Junping was very ignorant, but Cat Eyes was an ability user. Perhaps she had some instinctive reaction and rejection? Luo Nan looked through Cat Eyes once more. Under the multicolored rays of light, the flirtatious dancer in his impression was dressed in street dance fashion. She wore a hat askew. She looked quite a bit younger than her overly mature appearance from that night. She looked a bit more handsome. If it wasn't for Hexaear's advance confirmation, he wouldn't have dared to greet him if they passed each other on the street. But during the operation, if this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Some words were better said openly. How am I stupid? Cat Eyes responded with a sneer when faced with Luo Nan's straightforward attitude. Mr. Psychic, where do you have the authority to command this operation? Where is the ability to act? Was it fun to pretend to be an innocent citizen here? You're just going to bring in a bunch of burdens, and then hand over the leadership to someone else? Fighting each other? Her words hit the nail on the head. Luonan was left speechless. In fact, this was one of the major taboos that He Yuan had pointed out during the last operation. He was doing the same now, maybe even worse. Those who had participated in the previous operation had at least known the target. But now Shui Weiluan and the special forces were still in the dark. Do you even have the slightest awareness of being an ability user? At the very least, a sense of superiority is fine. Cat Eyes wasn't admonishing him. Rather, she was ridiculing him. However, the effect was more or less the same. Luonan spread his hands, not knowing how to respond for a time. You two, what are you still doing inside? Shui Weiluan walked over with large strides. He was very dissatisfied with the two people whispering to each other within the mist of light. Of course, he was puzzled by the inconsistency of logic. He took out the most straightforward and efficient attitude towards this. I don't care what path you two have. You two must cooperate when facing the police. Luonan explained to me. What kind of monkey show were you playing just now? This sort of attitude was like that of an organ of authority, but it also had the style of an elder. It had to be said that the effect was extremely good for a young man like Luonan. If he had been the only one here, his brain would have exploded just trying to think of words to say. Fortunately, he had Cat Eyes with him. Luonan pushed the woman to the side out without hesitation. It's time to display the superiority of an ability user. Cat Eyes didn't refuse. At least this old man is much smarter than you. The two left the range of the mist of light at the same time. Then Cat Eyes took the initiative to meet Shui Weiluan and start negotiating. Luonan didn't care about the results of the negotiation. He thought that Cat Eyes, a veteran ability user, shouldn't be unable to resolve the issue. Right now, all of his energy was placed in the area covered by the projection mist of light. When all was said and done, technical work suited him better. Cat Eyes viewed this area covered by the mist of light as the most dangerous area. This was because she didn't know where the invisible human-faced arachnid would suddenly appear from. However, Luonan's view was different. Ever since the appearance of the human-faced arachnid, Luonan had always been on guard. Please turn the page if this chapter is not finished. Luonan locked onto its position. It didn't matter if it was inside or outside the mist of light. There was no difference. If there was a difference, it was probably that it was clearer. The projection mist of light obscured the line of sight in the eyes of others, but it presented itself in a completely different way on Luonan's side. Chaos and ripples could only be said to be a lack of understanding towards the fundamental operation of energy and information. The projection mist possessed a specific form of light. Of course, it also belonged to the category of energy and information. Moreover, it was an extremely intuitive kind. Because of this, Luonan's mental senses allowed him to see the structure and layout inside. It was as if he was looking at the lines on his palm. Even the finest hair could be seen clearly. It's another Tower of Babel-type structure. It's more precise than the tactical helmet's chipset, but it's still quite a distance away from the perfect layout of the dynamo core. Luonan used a picky attitude to make a judgment towards the structure level of the projection mist. It could be said that Luonan's entire body relaxed when the projection mist of light enveloped him. If this wasn't the case, how would he have the leisure to discuss the topic of idiots with Cat Eyes? The problem was that the party that created the projection couldn't see Luonan's thoughts. They had released such a structure for a special and crucial purpose. Luonan could see it clearly. When the human-faced arachnid crashed into it, the structure of energy and information of the two were like gears meshing together. A vehicle entered the rails, realizing an extremely perfect fit. It followed the mold of the projection mist, and began to correct the deviation. The human-faced arachnid's structural information, which had been a bit chaotic before, was affected by this and unexpectedly became clear. Luonan could see that the direction of the operation of energy and information was rapidly pulling apart from the material plane. The human-faced arachnid's foolish action of interfering with the material plane was forcefully straightened. Why forcefully? This was because there was a component within the structure of energy and information that was extremely compatible with each other. This component continued to radiate information that was incompatible with each other. It was like a smooth-running production line. There was a noise that came and went. It was ear-piercing and awkward no matter how one looked at it. Could it be that this was the legendary defective product? Luonan gradually increased the precision of his senses. In the end, he was able to confirm that this defective component came from the interior of the human-faced arachnid. It came from a functional area that appeared to be rather important. The interior? Suddenly, Luonan grasped the crux of the situation. The interior of the human-faced arachnid? Was the other party amusing him? Chapter 190. From Luonan's perspective, the human-faced arachnid was chaos. It was a riddle. 10 days ago, Luonan's dynamo core had begun to analyze the human-faced arachnid with its special function. But even though he repeatedly made breakthroughs and made many references, his progress in analyzing the human-faced arachnid had not broken past 7%. Even so, there were probably only a few people in the current Xia city who understood the human-faced arachnid more than Luonan. Even with Luonan's understanding of the human-faced arachnid, it was hard for him to have a clue as to the internal structure of its core. The closest they ever came was when the Bloodflame Order's human-faced arachnid and the Wraith Sign devoured each other. At the time, Luonan believed that he had seen the marvels of the internal structure of the human-faced arachnid. But it was later proven that it was nothing more than a mold that the Bloodflame Order's Bloodsoul Temple had projected into the human-faced arachnid. It was a preparation for the Order's sacrificial artifact. Therefore, Luonan's understanding of the internal structure of the human-faced arachnid was still in a guessing stage. He would occasionally have a clue, but looking at the overall situation, he was still shrouded in fog. Right now, if the other party, which was probably the Order of Justice, was really able to take out the internal structure of the human-faced arachnid, and exhaust the laws and principles of how its energy and information operated and changed, Luonan would have to admit that he was convinced, no matter what his stance was. However, what Luonan saw right now was not the case. The human-faced arachnid revealed a deep structure within the energy and information operating structure of the projected glowing mist. It appeared to be precise and complex. If the human-faced arachnid were to follow this structure, then the siege hammer that the human-faced arachnid often used, the method of stimulating and devouring negative emotions, and so on could all be used. But if one were to really look into it, there were too many specious areas. The legal theory was appropriate, but there was no surprise and it was too shallow. From Luonan's perspective, the most powerful aspect of the human-faced arachnid was none other than its tyrannical instincts that lacked intelligence. He could completely rely on his instincts to produce an astonishingly accurate reaction. Such instincts should be built on a solid and complete foundation. Just like an intelligent system, with a large enough database, as long as the corresponding fuzzy conditions were given, it would be able to make an effective judgment. The human-faced arachnid in front of him was far too lacking in resources. At the end of the day, it was just a piled-up object, deduced from some superficial laws. It was a lifelike simulation model. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. But God was not. After such a long time, I've only built a model, or rather, an exoskeleton armor, on the mental level. In such a case, I can't say that I have any powerful instincts, and my judgment will definitely be wrong. Luonan dissected it layer by layer. He completely uncovered the foundation of this human-faced arachnid. In the end, he was able to confirm that the so-called flawed component played a role in the entire structure. Since it's an exoskeleton armor, it still needs to be controlled by a person. The problem is, to choose such an idiot who has not adapted to the spiritual world at all, and can't be corrected in a short time. Isn't it terrible? He looked at the naked Huangbingjin in the crowd and wanted to laugh. The facts were now very clear. Huangbingjin had indeed gone into an out-of-body state, and the way he did it was to put on the human-faced arachnid exoskeleton armor. Alright, this could be considered a good invention. At least it could allow people like Huangbingjin to experience extraordinary power for themselves. Oh wait. A certain thought streaked through his mind at this time, twisting Luonan's train of thought into a different direction. No matter how bad this structure is, it still possesses the ability to shuttle back and forth on the mental plane. And as long as there are the corresponding materials and methods, it can certainly be mass-produced. For someone like Huang Bingjin, just being able to obtain a 10,000th of the human-faced arachnid's power is enough for him to come and go as he pleases. For an ordinary person who lacks extraordinary power and talent, this is an enormous temptation. Luonen looked at the human-faced arachnid model once more as his thoughts reached this point. He looked at the flawed component that contained Huang Bingjin's soul. The expression in his eyes suddenly changed. Could this be the secret of the secret order's divine manifestation? Many thoughts spun in his mind in succession. Luonen was a bit spellbound. And at this time, a group of people entered through the entrance of the luxurious room. They were all wearing police uniforms, but they weren't equipped with exoskeleton armor. Luonan's eyebrows involuntarily furrowed when he saw this group of people rush in. He swept a glance through the peephole. That person's negotiations didn't seem to have any effect. Right now, a human-faced arachnid was being corrected in this room. This matter involved the Ability User Society, the Secret Order, and a series of extraordinary powers. It was fine if this group of people came late, but weren't they just causing trouble by coming in now? The leader of the group of police officers had a medium build and a lean physique. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. He shouted as soon as he entered. Old Shui, not only can your special police force solve cases, you can also find cases. You're quite capable. It looked like they came with bad intentions, but Shui Weiluan really couldn't say anything. This was because these people were the public security police who should appear at the scene of a case. Their special police force's actions just now were indeed suspicious of exceeding their authority. Moreover, the person who came was the chief of the East Prefecture Subbureau. Frost River Reality was under his jurisdiction. He could only be more cautious about this matter. Guiju, the matter just now was sudden. I just reported it to you at the last minute. Please don't blame me. Shui Weiluan would certainly give him face. But right now he needed to take care of the most important problem first. His gaze cut to Cat Eyes, who had just finished negotiating. He swept his gaze over Luonan's face with complicated thoughts. He finally made up his mind. Guiju, there's something I need to say. We suspect that there's a Darksider life form roaming around here. Darksider life form? I know. Someone has already reported it. Guiju's attitude was very calm. His feelings towards Darksider life forms were no different from the usual thieves, gangs, and so on. He used his chin to point at the glowing mist in the projection area. This isn't within the scope of our responsibilities. The military will soon come and take over. They are the professionals. Professional problems should be solved by professionals. Shui Weiluan approved of this method. The problem was that there were professionals by his side. Cat Eyes' attire did not give people much confidence. But the strength she had displayed before, and the relevant means of communication, had already formed a credible chain. Guiju, I just confirmed with headquarters. I also confirmed it. That's why I'm here to clear the area first. Guiju waved his hand, and an electronic voice sounded from outside the door. Frost River Reality's self-made multi-purpose robots were like diligent worker bees. They drove into the luxurious room one after another. They followed the preset program and locked onto the familiar figures in the projection mist. The order I received was to first ensure that the innocent masses are not affected. Those who need to be sent to the hospital should be sent there. This is to avoid long nights and dreams. Even if there aren't any symptoms, they will still get sick. Oh right, old Shui, you can withdraw now. The night has been tough enough. Everyone, don't wait. I'll update tomorrow morning. Chapter 191. Shui Weiluan watched as the multi-purpose robots unfurled stretchers and entered the scene one after another. Behind the visor, Shui Weiluan narrowed his eyes. What should we do with the scene? The technicians have already taken photos and recorded them. Moreover, the mutants have responded to the third level. The Darksider life form is lurking, and the military is about to enter the scene. Where would we have the space to investigate this case? Has the ambulance arrived yet? All of them are to be transported out. Unrelated personnel, please leave. Guoju replied with a few simple sentences before giving out an order. Immediately, the multi-purpose robot drove into the operating area and moved the unconscious body. Among them, 2 were in charge of tidying up the scene. They separated the stacked bodies and moved them onto stretchers. The rest of them were in an assembly line, sending the unconscious Hu Huaying and the others away one after another. Several special police officers looked at Xue Weiluan. Xue Weiluan indicated for his subordinates to leave the room first. No matter what was said, if it really was a Darksider life form hiding, then these special police officers wouldn't be of much use. Xue Weiluan hadn't moved, so Guoju had directly cleared the area. Logically speaking, it made sense. However, the timing was very delicate, and the way he did it was too suspicious. The so-called clearing of the area meant that other than moving the unconscious bodies away, everyone else present was also on the list. The special forces retreated from the room, leaving only Luo Nan and Cat Eyes. Neither of them moved. Luo Nan was a bit distracted at first, but Guoju and the robots entered the scene one after another. The projected glowing mist changed accordingly, drawing Luo Nan over once more. He stared at the projected glowing mist with a focused expression. Cat Eyes, on the other hand, swept her gaze over the suddenly lively situation in the room with great interest. No matter who it was, they didn't take Guoju's appearance to heart. Then, according to Guoju's request, the police appeared beside them and asked them to leave. Luo Nan's observation was interrupted once more. He was a bit displeased. He cast his gaze towards Cat Eyes, meaning, "This is the result of your negotiation?" Cat Eyes raised her middle finger at him. "Your nature has changed a long time ago, okay? You've seen the society's recent announcements. Right now, the problem with the human-faced arachnid is no longer hunting Darksider life forms. Instead, it's fighting against certain orders. Oh, stay away a bit." She casually pushed aside the innocent and ignorant police officer beside her and walked over to Luo Nan. On this side, the police officer responsible for clearing the scene saw that Luo Nan was still a half-grown child, so he didn't do anything ruthless. He just wanted to grab Luo Nan's shoulder and drag this strange kid with drifting eyes out. The moment Cat Eyes arrived, he staggered a few steps back and bumped into his colleague. Luo Nan didn't pay attention to the situation around him. He spoke to Cat Eyes' order. "If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page." Yes, he wholeheartedly agreed. From what he understood from the Bloodflame Order, the Bloodflame Order was not the only organization that had designs on the human-faced arachnid. Today, the Order of Justice was not the only organization that had designs on it. There were at least 2 or 3 other organizations that were inclined or even taking action in this direction. It seemed that in a single night, the human-faced arachnid had become a treasure that the secret orders of the world competed over. At the very least, it was a rare commodity worth hoarding. The emergence of such a situation was directly related to the general lack of sacrificial vessels of small and medium-sized churches. As for the information that the human-faced arachnid could be used as a sacrificial artifact, it was a taboo even within the Bloodflame Order. It was practically never directly mentioned. Comparatively speaking, Luo Nan was a bit surprised that a colossus like the Order of Justice was added to the mix. From his understanding of the situation, the Order of Justice seemed to be conducting some sort of simulation research on the human-faced arachnid to develop a new faith product. At this moment, the atmosphere in the VIP room was extremely tense. No matter how casually Cat Eyes acted, the meaning behind her actions was extremely serious. The few police officers present placed their hands on their guns. They did not pull out their guns and fire on the spot because Xue Weiluan had promptly stopped them. "Hold on, Guoju. They are important witnesses. Moreover, they are experts that have been verified by headquarters and the SCA. There are so many experts these days that they can be used to build walls." Guoju had an ugly expression. In the end, he knew some inside information. Even though he had been assigned by someone, he absolutely could not step on a mine and offend someone. The situation was tense and deadlocked for a time. Cat Eyes gave him a look that probably meant, "What now?" Luo Nan was speechless at this situation. But no matter what was said, he did obtain a bit of peace for the time being. He became more and more convinced that he was absolutely not the material to control the situation. He simply gave up and poured all of his attention into the technical aspect. Little did he know that in the eyes of others, he completely disregarded the ways of the world. He sullenly immersed himself in his own world. He was arrogant and dangerous. Guoju's gaze had already shifted from Cat Eyes to Luo Nan's face. He carefully observed where Guoju's gaze was directed, his expression as gloomy as water. At this time, Luo Nan's gaze was locked onto a multi-purpose robot within the room. It was in charge of carrying people together with another robot companion. After entering the room, it circled back and forth in the operating area, dutifully fulfilling its duty. Luo Nan didn't have any objections to the robot itself. However, as it entered the operating area, it projected light. This chapter has yet to end. Please turn the page. Within the mist, the originally stable operating structure of energy and information began to undergo a change. Large amounts of energy flow and information flow rapidly leaked downwards, pouring into an unremarkable external module on the robot's body. Even Cat Eyes, with her astonishing psychic senses, would find it hard to detect this sort of transfer of energy and information, let alone the average person. Only Cat Eyes was unable to hide it from Luo Nan. This was an eye-opener for him. This method took the existence of the mental plane and completely transformed it into energy and information. Then it was downloaded into a special storage device. It looked inconceivable, but the train of thought was actually clear. It was a reversal of the structure and function of the Tower of Babel. The subtleties within were truly worthy of proper research. Guoju, who had been hidden all this time, suddenly jumped out to clear the area and drive people away. His intentions were very clear. Was this the rhythm of the prototype, beginning to be recycled after field testing? Luo Nan did not stop this process. He still wanted to observe. This was because he knew very well that there was a node that could not be bypassed. The human-faced arachnid exoskeleton armor could be restored, downloaded, and stored, but the human soul absolutely could not. As the relevant structure was restored layer by layer, it was transformed into pure energy and information that was transmitted into the storage device. The flawed component that was originally hidden deep within the human-faced arachnid exoskeleton armor was inevitably exposed. A blurry mass of smoke suddenly separated itself from the operating structure of energy and information, which only had a skeleton left. It first condensed into a ball, carrying a bit of light that could only appear on the mental plane. It paused in the air for a moment before hurriedly charging toward Huang Bingzhen's body, who was about to be transported away. The timing was quite good. Luo Nan knew that this was Huang Bingzhen's soul. It seemed to be wrapped in a special layer of protection, avoiding the tragedy of a plane crash. The Order of Justice's product of faith was quite human-like in design. Luo Nan had no intention of interfering. He just observed with interest. However, accidents always happened. Huang Bingzhen's tiny soul, which had separated itself from the mysterious human-faced arachnid exoskeleton armor, made a habitual mistake. He was too close to the material plane. Originally, this wasn't a big deal. As long as he touched the range of his fleshly body, his soul and flesh would become one, and everything would be fine. But right now, there was also Cat Eyes in the room besides Luo Nan. Cat Eyes suddenly discovered a suspicious target. Her mental senses instantly cut over, locking onto and scanning. This was a very normal reaction, but it was like a whip heavily lashing down on Huang Bingzhen's fragile soul structure. Chapter 192. Cat Eyes excelled in long-range perception. It was a type of mental sensing. Her all-encompassing perception could cover a radius of 50 to 70 meters, but it was different from Luo Nan's clairvoyance. The level of her senses was mainly concentrated in the area where the mental and the material interfered with each other. The depth of her senses on the mental plane wasn't enough. It was very difficult for her to reach the human-faced arachnid, an object that was far from the material plane and hidden extremely deeply. But within the inherent level of perception, Cat Eye's perception accuracy was extremely high and its penetrative power was strong. It was like a high-powered active radar that covered the surrounding area. Huang Bingjin couldn't take it anymore because the power output was too high. What the hell? Cat Eye's reaction was fast. She quickly realized that something was wrong and withdrew her mental senses. Fortunately, he controlled it well and didn't burn Huang Bingjin along with the outer protective shell. However, it wasn't easy to completely withdraw this kind of spiritual attack that could be launched with just a thought. On the spiritual level, Huang Bingjin immediately let out a miserable howl. Outside of his fragile soul, the protective shell trembled twice, as if its structure was damaged, but at least it didn't break. If this brother was really smart, he would take this opportunity to quickly slip back into his own body. However, today was destined to be a busy day. Huang Bingjin, after all, had not been through any great storms, nor was he familiar with the workings of the mental plane. When he was attacked, he stood there dumbfounded, not knowing when to advance or retreat. That miserable howl had traveled a certain distance on the mental plane, so it was more or less a signal. As Luo Nan and Cat Eyes looked at each other, a storm suddenly rose on the mental plane. Tyrannical mental senses cut in from a distance. The first thing it broke through was the 70-meter radius of Cat Eye's all-encompassing perception. The powerful pressure caused Cat Eye's expression to suddenly change. The other party's mental attack came crashing down, as though it was unstoppable. Even if Cat Eyes excelled in perception, a confrontation on the mental plane wasn't her forte. She wouldn't truly meet force with force, but her forceful actions still expressed her clear stance. In an instant, the opponent's mental senses had already broken into the luxurious private room. He inspected the situation within the room without the slightest scruple and forcefully suppressed Cat Eyes, reducing the range of her senses. A strong enemy. It might be a spiritual enhancement specialization. Cat Eyes used her telepathic thoughts to leave a message in the encrypted channel. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. An effective method of communication could be achieved in an instant. However, in the time it took to say this, the channel was refreshed. The opponent's main body is within 40-30 meters. He's very fast and his HP is very high. Damn it, he's an all-rounder. Avoid direct confrontation. Order the special police to assist. The relevant instructions and authorization have been sent. The one who responded was He Yuan. From the very beginning, He Yuan had been in charge of dispatching operatives through the encrypted channel. Though Luonan didn't listen to her advice and still got involved in the situation, she made corresponding adjustments all this time. She utilized the nearby resources to the greatest extent, increasing the safety factor. Cat Eyes obviously knew that this was a very good idea. The problem was that she wanted to stop, but the other party was unwilling to let her go. It was unknown which sensitive nerve Huang Bingjin's miserable howl had triggered, but after scanning the entire VIP room, his spiritual senses instantly turned into an attack. Like waves, he truly brought out the power of an attack. The problem was that if he did that, the first person to suffer would be none other than Huang Bingjin. He was nearly unable to withstand the mental senses that Cat Eyes had unintentionally released earlier. Right now, the mental attack from the other party was like a raging storm that came pressing over. This was a calamity for Huang Bingjin. His defense was already very weak. It was like a bubble, instantly collapsing. No matter how stupid Huang Bingjin was, he knew that he had entered a desperate situation. He immediately let out another miserable howl. However, it was useless. The bubble of defense collapsed, and a wisp of smoke diffused. At first, Huang Bingjin's appearance was barely visible, but he lost his shape in an instant. He swayed and dispersed. Luonan knew that this was the result of his out-of-body state. His structure wasn't tough enough, and he was too close to the material plane. He was blown apart by the mutual interference between the mental and the material. Huang Bingjin was an ordinary person. He didn't have any mental cultivation at all. His soul wasn't even in shape, and he had lost his protective shell. He didn't have any ability to survive at all, let alone the howling storm in the outside world. The environment on the mental plane was vile to the extreme, and at this time, the person who came because of Huang Bingjin's miserable howl had no intention of stopping. The mental attack continued to come, completely suppressing Cat Eyes. Cat Eye's range of senses shrunk again and again until she was forced into the VIP room. She lost all perception of the outside world. Damn it. Cat Eyes was so angry that she gritted her teeth. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. The mental attack was her bitter hand. Actually, the method she was most accustomed to was to combine her sensitive perception with her nimble and vigorous body. She would fight for the initiative while moving at high speeds. But right now, there was a half-crippled idiot by her side. She was afraid of harming the innocent. She couldn't even use half of her abilities. It was truly stifling to the extreme. The other party was extremely sharp. Once he seized the initiative, he didn't give Cat Eyes any chance to adjust. His rapidly approaching figure became erratic after obtaining the advantage of total suppression. Cat Eyes couldn't help but worry about when and where this powerful enemy would come from. Cat Eyes glared fiercely at Luo Nan. She knew that nothing good would come out of being together with this fellow. Crash! A marvelous trembling sound rang out, spreading out on the mental plane. Cat Eyes' scalp went numb the moment she heard this sound. Her already dangerous defensive line completely collapsed in an instant. Just as the backlash was about to attack, a similar trembling sound came from the depths of Cat Eyes' body and soul structure. Incorporeal chains were activated from their slumbering state. They instantly erected an indescribably marvelous frame. It was like the stable frame of a building. No matter how fierce the winds blew, it stood towering and unmoving. The fatal backlash strangely dissipated. Even the tyrannical mental attack didn't seem as powerful as before. Although Cat Eyes lacked the strength to counterattack right now, she seemed to be immune to all mental attacks. The range of her mental senses, which had already shrunk to an extreme, began to recover its lost ground. It expanded outwards layer by layer. The powerful enemy also discovered this situation. Not only on the mental plane, but also on the material plane. A low nasal sound was transmitted over, allowing everyone in the room to hear it clearly. They were indeed extremely close. Cat Eyes obtained a breather, and immediately carried out He Yuan's orders to the end. She shouted, "Captain Shui, be on full alert. The killer is nearby." She didn't care about the consequences. She first put on a big hat and then talk. In any case, Huang Bingzhen's soul was scattered, and he was 90% dead. It wasn't a lie. But just as Cat Eyes' voice fell, a heavily chained crow shot out horizontally on the mental plane. It was like a raging python, shuttling through the void. It struck Huang Bingzhen's nearly scattered soul mist. Chapter 193. Since Huang Bingzhen's soul was close to the material plane, Luo Nan's heavily chained crow had to be close to Huang Bingzhen in order to control him. Therefore, he was unable to hide it, allowing Cat Eyes to see it. At this moment, Cat Eyes cast a somewhat odd gaze. On one hand, it was Luo Nan's act of finishing off. On the other hand, it was the chains themselves. No matter what expression Cat Eyes had, Luo Nan knew what he was doing. The moment the heavily chained crow struck, not only did the mass of soul smoke not shatter, it strangely congealed together. At this time, the powerful enemy that he had yet to meet continued to radiate a powerful mental attack. Within the area of the luxury room, the mental plane was completely covered by a powerful storm. Any power that wanted to clash against it would be utterly defeated in an instant. The problem was who would want to clash against it. Luo Nan had fought against the human-faced arachnid and Elder Mo Luan of the Bloodflame Order. They had all fought on the mental plane before. They possessed ample experience, and he knew where his advantage lay. Whether it was the format of My Heart's a Prison, or the rhythm of soul breathing, they were all self-formed structures. They were unaffected by external objects. Even though the storm howled on the mental plane, Luo Nan's heavily chained crow only trembled a few times. He did not seize power, occupy space, or forcefully block. Instead, he firmly established the structure. The structure of Luo Nan's body and soul, from the inside to the outside, was like this. Aside from his lackluster outer shell, there was certainly pressure. The stimulation of the nervous system had an effect on his skin, flesh, and internal organs. But it was nothing compared to the time he was ruthlessly tricked by the Wraith sign yesterday. He coughed a few times and stabilized his breathing. The wisp of Huang Bingzhen's remnant soul at the front of the chains was affected by the chain's format. It stabilized as well. A portion of the faint smoke that was scattered all around even flowed back. It more or less recovered a bit of its outline. Then the chains pressed down, forcing the soul smoke back into Huang Bingzhen's body. The soul and flesh were finally united, but only the heavens knew if there were any residual effects. The pressure on Cat Eye's suddenly decreased, and her senses became much sharper. She took in Luo Nan's series of movements. Even though she felt awkward in her heart, she could not help but exclaim in admiration. This is the soul-subduing technique. This dance is quite good. Huang Bingzhen was not necessarily worth saving. Luo Nan did not have a good impression of this person. The reason why he made a move was because he did not want to see Huang Bingzhen die. How could a living person die in such a manner? In addition, it was as if the flame was being pulled out. He wanted to show his enemy that the mental storm was useless against him, and it was useless against the people he wanted to protect. Cat Eyes was like this. Huang Bingzhen, who was 90% dead, was also like this. Luo Nan's declaration did have an effect. When Huang heard Luo Nan's voice, Luo Nan. Afterwards, there was an occasional resurgence. The other side should be constantly probing Luo Nan's foundation, trying to break through this kind of situation. But in the end they returned without success. The Shan, the Luan and Shun. The other side did not conceal their target at all. A high-powered active radar, similar to Cat Eyes, was stationed within the luxurious room the entire time. They vowed to see through Luo Nan. Huang to Luo a Tian Shan to Tian. No. The mental plane. Luo Nan's methods on the mental plane were indeed inconceivable, but in the end they were not on the material plane. Aside from ability users, it was very difficult for normal people to see them. They were on a completely different rhythm. Guiju, who had been clamoring to clear the area, naturally refuted Cat Eyes when she yelled murderer. He claimed that Cat Eyes was making irresponsible remarks. What he said was true in a sense, but unfortunately, it was meaningless. At this moment, Xue Weiluan simply couldn't be bothered to pay attention to them. What he truly cared about was Cat Eyes' warning, as well as that nasal sound filled with ill intent. Cat Eyes and Luo Nan's behavior during this time grew more and more bizarre. They appeared to be a bit neurotic. However, Xue Weiluan had some relevant knowledge. He knew that this kind of certified expert was on a different level from ordinary people. Out of consideration for the safety of the people involved, Xue Weiluan actively deployed manpower and set up a cordon. Of course, he did not forget to ask the technicians to look for the source of the nasal sound. Seeing Xue Weiluan's attention shift, Guiju didn't appear to be overly excited, but he was actually secretly relieved. To him, whether the situation was in a stalemate or how it would change was not the main point. What was truly important was the robots that were operating according to the program. The 3 multifunctional robots in the room had already reached the end of the transportation work. The last human body, which was Huang Bingzhen, was also lifted onto a stretcher. They drove their metal bodies out of the room in an orderly fashion. The people present were already disinclined to pay attention to the 3 bothersome robots. In any case, the scene had already been destroyed to the point of no return. Please continue to the next page if this chapter is not finished. However, it didn't matter. Guiju's heart was thumping wildly. His peripheral vision had always rested on the body of the robot at the very front. He watched as it opened up a path in front of him, guiding the stretcher, and slowly driving it out the door. His heart finally let out a long sigh of relief. He had passed. His relief didn't even last for half a second. In the next moment, the short and stumpy metal robot was struck head-on by an enormous force. Its 100-kilogram body flew back with a rumble and fiercely collided with its companion behind it. The 3 robots were like dominoes. They collided one after another, flew back, and fell in disorder. Their operating systems were a complete mess. They could only struggle on the ground, unable to get up no matter how hard they tried. The most miserable one was the stretcher on the robot in the middle. The entire module was bounced away. Huang Bingzhen, who was on the stretcher, was like a duck that had its feathers removed. He flew into the air and fell in a free fall, landing solidly on the ground. The stretcher module stayed in the air for a bit longer. When it fell, it just so happened to slap Huang Bingzhen's face. After the muffled sound, there was actually a groan. He's alive? Even though such an unforeseen event had suddenly occurred, Cat Eyes could not help but be distracted for a moment. Her gaze swept over the naked duck on the ground, and she gasped in admiration at Luo Nan's godly skills once more. Luo Nan's attainments in soul studies were enough to make an authoritative figure like Mr. Bai cast sidelong glances at him with just this one move. Sure enough, this fellow was a hidden boss. Who knew how many good things were hidden in his stomach? Soon, Cat Eyes had to recollect her mind. This was because at this very moment, someone slowly walked in through the suddenly emptied door. Under the dim lighting, it was a dazzling white. The person who came wore a large snow-white robe. It was completely incompatible with the scene of real life. It was like the attire of a priest or a priest that would only appear in religious places. Compared to the standard of the robe, the color was truly excessive. Even under the disorderly lighting of the room, the robe seemed to be able to completely reflect all the colors of light, leaving only a dazzling and pure white. Guoju, who was not too far away from the door, had his heart about to jump out of his chest due to the robot being sent flying and damaged. But at this time, he suddenly thought of a group of people when he saw this dazzling white. His beating heart instantly got stuck in his throat, choking him to the point where he nearly suffocated. There's still one more chapter before dawn. Friends, you can watch it tomorrow morning. Chapter 194. No. They shouldn't know me. Chief Guo wanted to control his nervousness and remain calm as much as possible. If possible, he wanted to turn his head away and not look. But if that was the case, it would be really suspicious. He could only pretend to be surprised. Perhaps he could mix in a little anger? However, the shining white in his eyes was the source of the fear that could not be erased. He tried his best to hold on for a second, and dispelled all other thoughts. He could only look over there in trepidation, and accept the corresponding information stiffly. Chief Guo saw the tall and burly figure wrapped in a white robe. A little higher, it was a Western-style facial contour. It was deep and clear, and his skin was a healthy bronze color. These were not very recognizable. However, when Chief Guo's gaze stopped on the side of the person's head and saw the bright red flesh where the ear should have been, his eyes seemed to have been pricked by a sharp needle, and his entire body shrank. Even though he only saw one side, Chief Guo knew very well that the other side was definitely the same. The protection of truth. Oh no, what the hell? Chief Guo could no longer hold it in. He turned his gaze away to avoid further stimulation, but it was meaningless. At this moment, his legs and stomach were spinning, and he felt a cool breeze blowing over his neck. In the blink of an eye, it turned into fire, burning his skin and flesh. Chief Guo shrank back and pretended not to see the person. However, Xue Weiluan could not do that. This guy who had suddenly appeared and was dressed in strange clothes was suspicious no matter how he looked at it. At the very least, he had to explain how he had walked into the defense circle set up by the special police and appeared in the door. Xue Weiluan placed his hand on the edge of the weapon cabin. Just as he was about to ask, the sound of bodies falling to the ground came from outside. The fully armed special police officers in exoskeleton armor fell almost at the same time. At this moment, Xue Weiluan's reaction was not slow. He instantly pulled out his gun and opened fire. The electromagnetic hand cannon specially prepared for the special police officers fired a fatal bullet. However, in the end, it only made a big hole in the door frame. The deflection angle was so big that it was beyond common sense. Xue Weiluan knew what was going on. The moment he pulled the trigger, his head was pierced by the invisible bullet first. The violent shock made him lose control of his body. He tried to turn it around. He staggered forward, but in the end he sat on the ground softly. It would be difficult for him to get up in a short period of time. All of the attacks were on the invisible and traceless spiritual level. In the face of an expert with mortal strength, ordinary people were really powerless. In just 2 seconds, the person finished clearing the area and walked in slowly. Luonan saw that this person's pupils were a deep gray. He gave off a feeling of solitude and coldness, but the violent methods he displayed added an extremely powerful tension and uncertainty. Of course, Luonan had also noticed that both of his ears were missing. With such an image and such tyrannical strength, he couldn't be a nameless figure, right? It was at this moment that Cat Eyes saw the appearance of the incoming person. She groaned in the encrypted channel. "We're in big trouble, child." "Child? Order of Justice?" "That's right, the ears of truth, a fanatic of the Order of Justice." Luonan's eyes weren't blind. "That Chief Gua is definitely related to the Order of Justice. Since he's from the same family, what's with that expression?" "Humph." The secular faction bumped into the truth faction. The shallow believer bumped into the fanatic believer. The replacer bumped into the executioner. It's already not bad that he's not crying for his mother. Just like all large organizations, the Order of Justice was unable to avoid internal disputes. This was especially true for a cult like theirs, which focused on the worship of holy objects and beliefs. Without the suppression of a powerful god, it was easier for things to go wrong. The Order of Justice's holy object was the distinctly black and white scales of truth. Within the order, the secular faction and the truth faction were like this scale. One was black and the other was white. They were separated on two sides. The two sides were just as their names implied. One leaned more toward the chaotic secular world, while the other leaned more toward the pure truth. The truth faction was dissatisfied with the secular faction's extraordinary actions in the sacred replacement. They believed that using the secular world's money, women, and turbid desires to replace the supernatural powers bestowed by the truth was a serious blasphemy. The secular faction snorted at the truth faction's harsh doctrines that were far from reality. At some point in time, the church's truth faction members began the purification project. They punished those who had gone too far during the deity substitution. Later on, the enmity between the two factions gradually accumulated. The so-called forms of punishment became more and more cruel. Quite a few truth executioners were born from this. Child was one of the most famous ones. His strength wasn't necessarily the strongest, but his habitual punishment of the mirror image of truth made people's expressions change. The basic concept was roughly this. Whatever ability one obtained through the secular replacement, one would die under the circumstances created by that ability. Luonan understood a bit. It was no wonder that Child still didn't care about Huang Bingzhen's life, even though he already had the absolute advantage. Now it seemed that he simply wanted Huang Bingzhen to die from the destruction of his soul. To the truth faction, there was nothing more disgusting than the fact that a person like Huang Bingzhen was alive in this world. The problem was that Child's intentions had been destroyed by Luonan. Child didn't immediately come looking for trouble with Luonan. According to the duties of the Purification Project, he still had a target that needed to be solved. Not far away from Child, Director Gua strove to maintain a bit of calmness, but it was useless. His entire body was trembling from head to toe. This was because he knew that the tall man standing behind him could take his life with a single breath if he really wanted to. Child walked to Director Gua's side and sized him up a few times. He opened and closed his mouth. His voice was deep and resonant. It was as if it could penetrate the eardrums of his ears. You don't need to worry for the time being. Using the price of the secular world to exchange for the achievement of the secular world still hasn't deviated from the original intention of the substitution. But who gave you the right to participate in the process of blasphemy against the truth? Director Gua opened his mouth to speak, but he couldn't find a suitable reason no matter what. He didn't even have the courage to turn his head. His face grew paler and paler, nearly transparent. Despair seeped out from within. The other people in the room were dumbfounded for a time. No one would have thought that Child would be this terrifying in Director Gua's eyes. It was easy to imagine the reputation and prestige of this executioner within the Order of Justice. Things don't seem too good. Chapter 195. Cat Eyes must have forgotten that she had been praising Luonan for using this standing posture. As for the question, Luonan knew the answer. Luonan's gaze first swept over Shui Weiluan, who was sitting on the ground. He confirmed that Uncle Shui had only suffered an attack on the mental plane, and that he was not in mortal danger. Luonan let out a secret sigh of relief. Then his gaze fell upon the 3 scrapped robots. He pondered whether or not the special storage device was still in good condition. The faith product inside was specially designed for people like Huang Bingda and Guoju. It was also the root cause of tonight's situation. The unconscious Huang Bingjin was blessed. The conscious Guoju was a complete tragedy. Guoju's body was shaking like a sieve. His gaze was stiff as he looked forward. He would answer whatever child asked him. He could not even think about whether he could save his life or not. Child's voice was like a clenched fist, squeezing everything out of his brain. As for what would be left in the end, perhaps only truth would know. Thanks to Guoju, Fairchild's attention was still on the other side. Luonan and Cat Eyes had a buffer. Cat Eyes shouted in the encrypted channel. "Where are the people behind us?" The encrypted channel began to flood. A fellow called Red Fox, who should have been behind Cat Eyes, arrived at the scene. He was already beginning to beat a retreat. "Fairchild? I'm just going to die. It's useless even if Kitty is here. Anyone else going to die?" Bamboo Pole, who had worked with them before, was also in the sequence. "Fox plus Cat, X2 is also wasted. You guys are still alive. That message is truly shocking." There was also a fellow called Papercut who revealed some actual information. "I personally saw the earless man in action last time. He's a master who went against the metal storm. His shield of truth is simply a bug. Are you guys sure you're still alive?" Bamboo Pole concluded. "Let's outsmart him. Let's kneel first. This brother is quite skilled in killing the order of justice." He Wayne sent over more detailed information at this time. Fairchild is indeed an all-rounder ability user, but his strength lies in the power of faith. He is one of the few who can draw upon the holy power of the scales of truth to form the shield of truth. He is an unstoppable fanatic for at least 90 minutes. In terms of defense, he is already at the level of a mortal. Cat Eye's eyes twitched when she saw this. "Hey, reading the information is useless. Why don't you tell us how to deal with it?" All members who have entered the operation but have not arrived at the scene of the incident, please turn to the Haipu Hotel on the neighboring Yulon Street. "What do you mean?" He Yuan replied calmly. "Fairchild has a tendency to go berserk when carrying out the purification project. None of the personnel currently deployed can make an enemy of him. It will only cause unnecessary stimulation. Therefore, they had to regroup and avoid adding fuel to the fire. I've already reported this to the association. The reinforcements and negotiations will be carried out simultaneously. It's still better to negotiate. Other than killing people within the order, this person is still very low-key to the outside world." Bamboo Pole suggested. "Kitty, why don't you share your view? Let's discuss it together. There wasn't any direct conflict in the first place. If we can reason with him and both of us take a step back, it would be best." Luonan could not get a word in on this discussion. After all, the target of the operation was no longer the human-faced arachnid, but a more direct problem like Fairchild. However, it was not right to say that he was completely unoccupied. Child had been watching him in a way that was difficult for others to understand. Luonan received it. He had to receive it. Finally, Guoju's calamity was over. Fairchild walked up from behind him, no longer paying attention to him. It was only now that Guoju dared to bend his knees. His entire body fell limply to the ground. He stared blankly at Fairchild's back. His body swayed within the dazzling white light. In the end, his head hit the ground and he fainted. "Good news. There's a way. You must hold on." Several messages popped up in the encrypted channel at the same time. Guoju's narrow escape gave the members of the society a glimpse of hope. Today, the killing intent of this Ears of Truth did not seem to be particularly strong. But soon, the few people sharing Cat Eyes' view in the channel felt a bit strange. Fairchild's gaze was slightly off in the direction they were facing. It looked very uncomfortable. "Kitty, who's he looking at?" "Mr. Luo," Cat Eyes answered simply. Only then did many people in the channel remember that Luonan, the convener of this event, had not spoken for a long time ever since they started spamming the channel. Hey, Are you still holding on? Bamboo Pole had cooperated with Luo Nan once before, so he had a rather deep impression of Luo Nan. From Bamboo Pole's perspective, Luo Nan was a specialized psychic. He was also an extremely inexperienced young student. His psychic drawing ability was astonishing, but he did not display any special talent when it came to his ability to deal with affairs. That night, Yuan had planned all of his actions for him. Occasionally, he would reveal his extraordinary talent, but it was Cat Eyes who was courting death. It made sense when one thought about it. A 16-year-old high school student who was trapped in the self-logic of a psychic all year round would not be a genius, but a monster if he could coordinate, communicate, and deal with affairs. Bamboo Pole's worries were very practical. Would this half-grown kid be able to hold on when facing one of the most terrifying executioners of the Order of Justice? This did not just require courage. It also required wisdom, experience, cultivation, and even a bit of luck. Luo Nan did not respond. The people in the encrypted channel did not even know if he had noticed this message. Kitty, what's going on with your partner? Yeah, he's under a lot of pressure. Cat Eyes shifted her gaze as she responded. This allowed the people in the encrypted channel to see Luo Nan's appearance next to her. It was just as Cat Eyes had described. Luo Nan's body was clearly a bit stiff. His face was the same. At the very least, it did not appear to be alive. Luo Nan's gaze was fixed straight ahead, meeting with Fairchild's dark gray pupils. Luo Nan's face was expressionless, but Fairchild's body language was alive. It was coordinated from top to bottom, revealing calmness, callousness, and dignity. As for Luo Nan, the muscles of his entire body were stiff. Anyone could see the tension and pressure he was under. Hey, hurry up and wake up. Relax your breathing. He can't hear us. He's done for. He's completely suppressed. It's already pretty good that he can look him in the eye. How old is he? Fairchild doesn't care about his age. That Huangbingzhen doesn't seem to be much older than Luo Nan. Amidst the chaos, there were people who were baffled. Why is he focusing on Luo Nan? What is Fairchild thinking? Could he have seen that Luo Nan is a psychic? The Order of Justice definitely doesn't lack psychics. They rely on psychics to make a name for themselves. Wave after wave of messages flooded the encrypted channel. Some used text, some used voice, and some simply used telepathy. All sorts of methods were mixed together, turning it into a pot of porridge. But in the next instant, all the chaos froze at the same time. This was because Fairchild's lips opened and closed. His deep and low voice flowed clearly within the room. Chapter 196. What chains? Other than Yuan in the encrypted channel, everyone else was baffled. Although Cat Eyes knew what was going on, it was very complicated for her to clearly describe it. She could only give a simple explanation. It's an application technique of Mr. Luo's on the mental plane. This explanation confused the technique and nature of Luo Nan's ability, but no one could point it out. Fortunately, Fairchild had his own opinions. He was not affected by the encrypted channel. He spoke slowly with a deep and vigorous voice. Looking at your chains is like looking at an airtight prison. Rules, laws, temperance, control. It possesses a pleasantly surprising sense of order. I really like it. This kind of evaluation, this kind of form, made everyone feel very surprised. It was like praise, but it was also like idle chatter. It caused the tense atmosphere to gradually ease up. This was a very good start. The problem was that everyone could see that Luo Nan was not good at this kind of situation. His reactions were very slow. He actually missed the best opportunity to communicate. He faced Fairchild directly, and did not make any response even when Fairchild's voice completely dissipated in the room. He maintained his silence from beginning to end. From the perspective of a group of onlookers, the atmosphere eased up for less than 2 seconds before turning awkward and stiff once more. Everyone in the encrypted channel beat their chests and stomped their feet. What a waste of an opportunity. Cat Eyes felt it even more clearly. She was a bit anxious and took a step forward, wanting to negotiate with Fairchild in Luo Nan's place. But when she took this step and was halfway in front of Luo Nan, Cat Eyes suddenly choked up. The words she had prepared were inexplicably unable to come out of her mouth. Her momentum weakened by a third. It was not easy for her to speak, so she unconsciously changed her words. Mr. Fairchild, we believe that all of this is a misunderstanding. We accidentally encountered this filthy secular exchange while we were chasing the human-faced arachnid. We are also trying to stop it. Fairchild remained expressionless. He did not even glance at Cat Eyes. He just replied with a proverb, when truth stands at the forefront, the secular should retreat. Cat Eyes opened her mouth, but she suddenly felt speechless. It was not just because of Fairchild's cold words. More directly, it was because she suddenly discovered that under the awkward and stiff atmosphere, there was something more direct and... This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. A dangerous undercurrent. The undercurrent surged on the mental plane. Moreover, it was a deep region that Cat Eyes found very difficult to perceive. It was only when Fairchild opened his mouth that a large fluctuation occurred in the mental attack, allowing Cat Eyes to peek at part of the truth. The sound of the heavily chained crow continued to reverberate. It was filled with the smell of danger and danger. This allowed Cat Eyes to confirm that Luo Nan and Child were engaged in an invisible contest right next to her. And she actually knew nothing about it. Cat Eyes did not know when this contest began or how long it lasted. But at this moment, she truly felt that she was an outsider, and a blind one at that. In the encrypted channel, Bamboo Pole noticed a problem. Stand at the front? It seems like Fairchild really does look at Luo Nan differently. Cat Eyes did not reply. She was still recovering from the scars of the attack. After all, Bamboo Pole did not understand the situation, and could only make wild guesses. That won't do. Fairchild has already made his stance clear. If we don't get a response and don't meet his expectations, no one knows what he'll do. How is Mr. Shaman's theoretical research? Between soul studies and philosophy, which one is better? Also, you can't get entangled in techniques when it comes to communication. At Fairchild's level, he can completely distinguish all lies. Just speak normally. Say whatever you want. I'll give it a try. Luo Nan's sudden response stupefied everyone in the encrypted channel. Actually, Luo Nan had been paying attention to the information in the encrypted channel all this time. He was very clear about the things that Bamboo Pole, Red Fox, and the others were discussing and worrying about. Luo Nan and Fairchild were indeed still confronting each other on the mental plane, using this special method to communicate. However, this did not mean that Luo Nan was satisfied with this. He actually did not feel too good. Due to the continuous use of soul strength, the pressure his body endured was gradually increasing. Soreness, pain, stiffness. His nervous system transmitted all sorts of negative effects to every part of his body. They were fed back one by one, forming a vicious cycle that continued to increase. If a simple verbal exchange could satisfy everything, why would he need to take this unnecessary risk? However, Luo Nan really did not know what to say. His mind spun round and round, but no matter how he thought, he was unable to find a perfect response. He knew nothing. Please continue to the next page if this chapter is not finished. Tao. How could communication between people be perfect in every aspect? In the end, his fear and suppression had taken the upper hand. Furthermore, he had the goal of stalling for time, so he was limited in every aspect. Bamboo Pole's reminder gave him some direction. What did he want to say the most right now when faced with Fairchild's evaluation? Luo Nan stared at Fairchild's callous and calm face. A few seconds passed before he took a deep breath and spoke softly. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fairchild. We're done for. The channel was filled with sorrowful cries. Luo Nan had responded immediately after Fairchild spoke, but it was not too bad. Just how long did he need to react to thank Fairchild? The channel was too chaotic. He Yuan, who had not spoken for a long time, simply cleared the screen. She did not need to do anything. Luo Nan had already given up on referring to the contents of the channel. He just said what he wanted to say. This is one of the results of my grandfather's research. I call it my heart's a prison. The prison of a prison. Based on the foundation of formatting theory. If there was anything in this world that could cause Luo Nan to talk endlessly, Then it would be his grandfather's achievements. His grandfather's formatting theory. After all, this was the result of his entire 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears. However, Child was not here to listen to his science. After 2 or 3 sentences, he cut to the chase and began a formal conversation. It's very good to have a special structure and function in a wonderful way. But physical training is terrible. Is it because of the lack of a system? This was a criticism of my heart's a prison. Luonan knew that Child was right, but at this moment, he felt that he needed to reciprocate. Mr. Child's mental storm also lacks order. It lacks a sense of rhythm. As soon as he said that, everyone in the encrypted channel went silent. They couldn't even utter a single word. Why did he suddenly become angry? When he finally came back to his senses, the channel was filled with notifications. Steady. Just bear with it for now. They don't have any ill intentions. Don't argue, or you'll be at a disadvantage. Unfortunately, Luonan had already completely ignored the opinion of the encrypted channel at this time. He followed the previous words and said, "What's the reason? It's too late. I can only make adjustments." Chapter 198. Luonan thought of Ruiwen the moment he opened his mouth. That night, when Ruiwen broke through the encirclement of the deep blue walkers, her strength had seamlessly switched from the material plane to the mental plane. Luonan would never forget the formation of an absolute explosive force, and the incomparable changes in tempo. Luonan had never truly experienced Fairchild's strength, but Ruiwen was above him in terms of tempo coordination. It was precisely because of the lack of a harmonized rhythm that the pressure Fairchild exerted on him during the confrontation on the mental plane was erratic and intermittent. The impact of the mental storm was very difficult to achieve Ruiwen's explosive power. Compared to the Bloodflame Order's elder Emoluan, it was much weaker. But was the difference between Fairchild, Ruiwen, and Emoluan that obvious? Even if he did not compare Ruiwen, why did he feel that the boldness of this Ears of Truth was above that of Emoluan? This was Luonan's doubt. If Luonan used pure words to express himself, he might not be able to express himself clearly when it came to all sorts of backgrounds and secrets. But Fairchild only used 2 or 3 sentences. Fairchild's response was even simpler. Reason. He simply repeated a word, and then took a step forward. With this one step, the entire luxurious room seemed to tremble. This was not an illusion. The equipment, the furnishings, and the people standing, sitting, kneeling, and lying in the room all trembled slightly. The 3 destroyed robots even let out rattling sounds. A dazzling halo of light spread from Fairchild's chest. It instantly enveloped his entire body and illuminated the entire room. Every corner of the room was completely devoid of shadows. Even the finest hair could be seen. It was at this moment that information exploded in the encrypted channel. Ah, the Shield of Truth. He's gone crazy. He's going to fight without saying a word. He's really courting death. He's done for. Where's the negotiation? Where's the backup? Kitty, run. Faster. Faster. Cat Eyes subconsciously took a step back, but she did not make any further movements. This was because Luonan did not move a single inch when facing Fairchild's terrifying pressure. At most he coughed twice. The pressure on Luonan's body grew even greater, but that was all there was to it on the mental plane. Please turn the page if this chapter is not finished. Child. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Fairchild. The dazzling sound and light effects. As Fairchild released his aura, the surrounding environment was inevitably affected. It was no longer just the luxurious room that was trembling. The entire Frost River reality seemed to be trembling. Was Child going to make a move? Luonan didn't think so. At this moment, what appeared in front of him was an energy and information operation structure built with his physical body as the foundation. Due to the limitations of the material plane, the structure was not as intuitive as the spiritual plane. The details could not be seen clearly, but the general principle was still clearly presented. The material plane and the mental plane pushed and interfered with each other, forming a vortex that existed on both the material plane and the mental plane at the same time. forming a dynamic yet stable structure. Child's spirit and body were one in this structure, supporting and interacting with each other. This was Child's reply. Perhaps it was very difficult for him to realize the rhythm of Rui Wen's body and soul merging and harmonizing. But the state of his body and soul had established a stable and powerful structure. The feeling he gave off was like an atomic furnace that contained enormous power. The mental and material interfered with each other inside, colliding intensely. Yet they operated in precise coordination, perfect and perfect. Luo Nan was speechless for a time. Only now did he truly understand the level of Child's power. It far surpassed anyone Luo Nan had ever seen. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Luo Nan would find it hard to imagine that a human with a mortal body could actually accumulate such astonishing energy within their body. In the end, the attack and defense on the mental plane and the storm set off were just the overflowing heat from this atomic furnace. Similarly, if Child's answer were to be translated into words, it would take 1,000 words to completely understand. Just one step was enough for Luo Nan to understand everything clearly. The foundation of the exchange between the two was precisely the confrontation on the mental plane. The heavily chained crow and the mental storm, one defensive and one offensive, collided and probed at each other every moment. All they needed to do was to repeat some of the situations that occurred during their exchange using words. Compared to the reality of the plane, perhaps it was closer to the original intentions of the two. Luo Nan had to admit that he was very suited for this sort of exchange. It was simple and direct, saving him a lot of meaningless words. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. There was no need to express any attitude. All intentions were clearly revealed through the mutual collision and probing on the mental plane. The only problem was that this sort of exchange was too strenuous. Luo Nan's soul could withstand it, but this did not mean that his body could. So he tried to use more words to translate. First, he needed to apologize for Child's misjudgment of the mental storm. I'm sorry. However, I don't think that my grandfather's theory isn't systematic. This situation only occurred because of the choice of method and the lack of depth of understanding in his early years. Everything else didn't matter. There was only one point, and that was Child's evaluation of formatting theory's lack of systematicness. This made Luo Nan very dissatisfied. The format of My Heart's a Prison was the result of systematic research. However, Luo Nan had chosen a dangerous method. He used psychotropic drugs to gradually correct the format of his nervous system, ultimately obtaining this ability. He had neglected the problem of his body during this process. This was also because he had not truly understood the essence of the formatting and the operational structure of energy and information in the past 5 years. He believed that if he was given the time to start over, he would be able to coordinate his soul and body better. At the very least, he would not be in such an extreme state of imbalance. As Luo Nan defended himself, he used his finger to point and gesture at Child's body. This further clarified the focus of his mental clairvoyance. It was the cranial nerves, the spinal nerves, and the nodes that Luo Nan had figured out over the past week. If he had been able to give these areas additional stimulation and training in the past 5 years, the results might have been completely different. What the hell is he doing? Is he apologizing or is he defending himself? What's up with his grandfather's theory? Does anyone know? The group of enthusiastic people in the encrypted channel were all stupefied. Luo Nan's words were incoherent, and he was gesticulating. Anyone who saw it would feel that it was incomprehensible. It was completely unreasonable. They thought to themselves that if they were in Luo Nan's shoes, they would certainly slap the ball to death. But looking at the current situation, Child did not make a move. Not only did he not make a move, but his dark gray eyes were focused on Luo Nan. He looked extremely focused. What was this? An exchange between a madman and a fanatic? They were surprisingly in tune. Chapter 199. It was already 8 o'clock in the evening. The rain was still falling endlessly from the sky. Bamboo Pole held an umbrella as he walked leisurely on the main street. On the side of the road, an enchanting beauty was grumbling to her companion in a low voice. Aside from the annoying autumn rain, there was also the slight earthquake just now. Bamboo Pole kept turning his head until the enchanting beauty's figure disappeared into the depths of the stream of people. If he did not have a mission tonight, he would not have minded a beautiful street encounter. As for the beginning of the conversation, there was no harm in saying, actually, it wasn't an earthquake just now. It was just two brothers with mental issues having a heated conversation. At this moment, Fairchild's voice came from the Hexa ear. Your order is reflected in your soul. My order is reflected in my fleshly body. We have only completed one side of the problem, while hoping to fix the flaw on the other side. The only difference is that I can continue to search for a solution, just like your chains. But you must first complete a difficult surgery, and make a systematic correction. The error lies in the theory or in the choice. It will not change the result. This was the longest Fairchild had said tonight. Bamboo Pole found the feeling of being a kindred spirit funny and strange when he heard it. Hold on. Fairchild was implying that he was very interested in Luo Nan's My Heart's a Prison format? Forget about anything else. As long as this conversation got out, the name of Mr. Psychic and his formatting theory would certainly soar. It would resound throughout Xia City. But was that thing really that useful? Bamboo Pole walked into Yulan Hotel with doubts. He took the elevator straight to the 89th floor. This was a restaurant. At a table by the window, a young man wearing a red jacket waved at him. Hey buddy, the best spot. It only costs 20 credits. Bamboo Pole curled his lips and walked over to sit down. The best spot is a block away. Kitty will be happy to trade places with you. That being said, when he looked through the drizzled glass window, he could still clearly see the triangular indoor playground 2 kilometers away. Red Fox grinned with an odd expression. The feeling of the three buildings swaying together was really cool. The spaceship is about to take off. The layout of Frost River Reality was very interesting. The entire building spanned across 3 independent buildings, each occupying a portion of the floor. The entire building was painted in the interwoven colors of space black and silver white. It was like a large triangular alien spaceship that was inserted into the city. It seemed as though it could fly into space at any time. Just a few minutes ago, Child had released the Shield of Truth. It was an exaggeration to say that it had shaken 3 buildings, but the strong sense of oppression that spanned the mental and material planes and radiated to the surrounding area covered a surprisingly wide area. Along the way, Bamboo Pole encountered pedestrians everywhere who thought it was an earthquake. Roughly estimating, the radius had already exceeded 3 kilometers. It was truly monstrous. On the other hand, Luo Nan and Cat Eyes, who were in front of Fairchild, were not affected too much. Perhaps Fairchild really was looking at them differently. As a technician, Bamboo Pole was not like the Red Fox. Once he was on standby, he would have nothing to do. The moment he sat down, he took out the foldable flexible screen that never left his side and started working. With a few movements, he connected to the monitoring system of Frost River Reality and the surrounding buildings. Logically speaking, even if he was an expert in information electronics, this would still be very difficult to accomplish. However, the society always had shares in Frost River Reality. They had quite a bit of relevant authority. Relying on the temporary authority He Yuan gave him, it was relatively easy for him to do these things. Hundreds and thousands of monitoring images switched back and forth on the flexible screen. Only an ability user like Bamboo Pole, who had exceptional dynamic vision, was able to grasp the key information within. Red Fox stretched his head out to take a few glances. He was extremely puzzled. What's the point of doing all this right now? That freak Fairchild has a radius of 3 kilometers. That's a field of control of 30 square kilometers. Right now we might even be the ones being monitored by him. Bamboo Pole did not even raise his head. He continued to filter through the images with his eyes. It's not that exaggerated. The resonance range of the Shield of Truth and the field of control are different. A ratio of 10 to 1 is already quite amazing. After all, it's a kind of cultivation where the body and soul are fused together. How can it be the same as mental senses? Oh, I forgot. You're an expert in the research of secret orders. Red Fox was the first to breathe a sigh of relief. That earthquake just now had really increased the pressure on him. He was feeling much better now. Don't relax too early. Fairchild has never been a high-profile character. Just now, he actually released the Shield of Truth without the slightest scruple to cover 30 square kilometers. He must have another goal. What's his goal? I don't know for now. Oh, there's a way. This is troublesome. The monitoring images were constantly being cut down. The images of certain people were becoming more and more prominent. Bamboo Pole transferred these images to the psychic wave network. Then he edited and annotated them before cutting into the encrypted channel. This was so that everyone involved in the operation could see it. Kitty, pay attention. The Order of Justice's secular side can't hold it in any longer. The Knights of Equity have already arrived, at least 2 small squads of 10 people. At least half of them have entered the field. Red Fox stared at the image and exclaimed, "Wow, do you see that piano case? I'll bet the points from this operation that it's definitely a large caliber sniper rifle. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to pose any threat to Fairchild. They've already begun to occupy sniping spots. This is intolerable." The encrypted channel exploded once again. That's odd. No matter how dissatisfied the secular side was in the past, they were used to being cowards. What's going on this time? They want to start a religious war? The Order of Justice wants to split? That's really good news. The problem is that we've all become fish in the pond. He Yuan's orders cut into the chaos. Bamboo Pole. Yulon Hotel is one of the best sniping spots in the neighborhood. It must be included in our monitoring. If it isn't necessary, avoid direct conflict with the people of the Order. Understood. I'm not a combatant. There was no temporary authority to use here. Bamboo Pole could not avoid personally making a trip to the central control room. He stood up and was about to move when Red Fox slapped his thigh. Look, who's that? Zhang Yingying. That girl is participating in the operation? Why is she going over there? Bamboo Pole was stunned. He hurriedly adjusted the monitoring image and saw Zhang Yingying and a tall beauty wearing a windbreaker walking side by side into Frost River reality. The two of them held each other's arms as they chatted and laughed along the way. They had an amiable demeanor and were very eye-catching. However, the windbreaker beauty's spiritual senses were very sharp. She suddenly turned her gaze towards the monitoring probe, meeting face to face with the people who were paying attention to her. Her dark chestnut-colored eyes were bright and beautiful. However, her expression, which seemed to be smiling yet not smiling, carried an indescribably deep meaning. Bamboo Pole inexplicably felt that this woman was familiar, but he could not recall where he had seen her before. Before he could finish his thought, Red Fox pushed him. Look. From their angle, they could see the low-altitude flying shuttle stop above the rooftop of Frost River reality. He Yuan's tall and slender figure descended from the sky behind the blurry curtain of rain. She told us to wait for orders. Chapter 200. The current Frost River reality was a bit different than usual. Around 8 o'clock in the evening was the time when Frost River reality was at its most bustling. At first glance, the reception hall seemed to be packed with people. However, most people were either heading out or hesitating. Fights, earthquakes, police intervention, and several batches of special forces had come. Plus, there were people being sent out to ambulances. No matter how big of a heart the players had, they would still feel apprehensive. The amusement park did not do anything about this. After Shui Weiluan and Yin Li's conversation, the group of managers no longer held any hope for tonight's revenue in the spirit of cooperating with the police. They let the police torment them. This was the scene Zhang Yingying saw when she entered Frost River reality. She could not help but sigh. If that earthquake monster came here, everyone in the reception hall would be dead. A group of ignorant and pathetic people. We knowingly violated it. So what? Bai Xinyan shrugged. It must be a moral model that keeps promises. Doctors have to be responsible for their patients. Zhang Yingying reached out to touch her face. The skin grafting technique of Luoyang City is amazing. It's 10 times thicker, isn't it? Bai Xinyan's eyelids fluttered. She turned to bite Zhang Yingying's fingertip. Zhang Yingying giggled and pulled back. Just as she was about to say something, her eardrums vibrated. A communication came through the hexa ear. Hey, don't be too wasteful. How do you expect us men to endure this? Bamboo pole, you peeping Tom. Zhang Yingying ground her teeth. You were the one controlling the camera just now, weren't you? It's a surveillance camera. I have to make sure you don't get wet while carrying out the mission. Speaking of which, didn't you guys feel such an obvious sign? You said earthquake monster? Of course I know. But right now I'm accompanying a guest or picking someone up. White Salt has a patient here. White Salt. Bamboo Pole's voice suddenly rose an octave. Are you sure it's the one in the brown windbreaker next to you? TSK. I haven't seen her for a few years and her style has changed. My impression of her is that of a researcher in a white coat. Does she have a boyfriend? Zhang Yingying rolled her eyes. Another communication came through. Hello, Miss Zhang. Secretary he, Vice President he. Zhang Yingying's voice was clearly drawn out when she saw the caller ID. She did not have a good impression of this new acquaintance who had seen through her weak nature and forced her to train at the bottom of the sea. Zhang Yingying noticed that the moment the call connected, Bamboo Pole had cut off the connection. This gave her a rough idea. One wouldn't visit a temple without a reason. Contacting him at this time was probably the mission that Bamboo Pole had mentioned. It's time to put on airs. However, He Wayne didn't have any intention of making friends and directly informed him of the current situation. Due to the lack of time, he didn't go into too many details and only introduced the main points. Only then did Zhang Yingying know which earthquake monster she had just heard was. Luo Nan is confronting Child. Is he looking to die? At present, Fairchild will not harm him for the time being. However, in the coming conflict between the secular side and the truth side of the order of justice, it is very likely that he will be drawn into it. Right now we need a few support points just in case. Can you join us? Zhang Yingying was speechless. The potential stock that he had introduced to the club now seemed to be a troublemaker who specialized in stirring up trouble. She didn't think about it for too long. She glanced at Bai Xinyan and said, I'm fine with joining, but I have a friend right now. Bai Xinyan? Ha, you know her? Bai Xinyan raised her eyebrows when she saw Zhang Yingying's gaze. In the next moment, her wristband vibrated. She saw the person she was contacting, and a smile blossomed on her face. Hello, sister. Long time no see. How are you doing? Zhang Yingying's eyes widened. She wanted to open her mouth to ask, but she saw Bai Xinyan and He Wayne chatting happily. She could only gesture back and forth for a time. How do you know her? Bai Xinyan just blinked at Zhang Yingying. Then she gave He Wayne a definite answer. No problem. I'm half a member of the society. Plus, I haven't been back to Xia City for a long time. I don't know how high the standards here are. It's good to have a chance to observe up close. However, she didn't completely comply with He Yuan's arrangements. She paused for a moment and then said, Do you have a more proactive strategy? The situation right now is very chaotic. Who are our friends and who are our enemies? The most important problem is to clarify this. This conversation was not hidden from others. Bamboo Pole and the others who were participating in the operation could hear it through He Yuan's channel. They were all deeply distressed. A hunting operation against the human-faced arachnid had turned into an encounter with the ears of truth, Fairchild. But right after that, it had turned into an internal conflict within the order of justice. The continuous shifting of contradictions left people at a loss as to what to do. They really were just here to surround the human-faced arachnid. But right now, powerful characters and powers were endlessly joining in, forming a giant maelstrom. The momentum grew fiercer and fiercer, and it looked as if there was no direction to speak of. These people felt a great deal of pressure, even though they were just there to provide support. In reality, there were already people who were beating the drums of retreat. Red Fox's desire to fight had never been too strong. Right now the order of justice is in a catfight. It's not appropriate for us to get involved, right? Most of the secret order are madmen. If an all-out war between the society and the order is ignited, then who will be responsible? Someone called Metalbox immediately appeared in the encrypted channel. He gave Red Fox's post a thumbs up. He had yet to arrive at Yulon Hotel, but he didn't want to come. The Society's mission briefing still has the human-faced arachnid written on it. Where the hell is the human-faced arachnid? I just saw Fairchild. When the mission ends, how will the points be calculated? This mission is too unreliable. The Wilderness Explorers Society had never been an organization with a powerful binding force. It was very difficult for a group of ability users to truly follow orders and prohibitions. For example, during the operation against the human-faced arachnid last time, Black Beetle and He Yuan had a disagreement and Black Beetle had simply withdrawn. Afterward, Black Beetle was unable to do anything to Black Beetle. What's more, the chaotic and ever-changing direction of the operation gave people an excuse to withdraw. With Red Fox and Metalbox mentioning it, even Bamboo Pole, who had fought together with Luo Nan, could not help but be moved. What about the others? Zhang Yingying had just entered the encrypted channel when she saw the scene of collapse. She was stupefied for a time. She turned to look at Bai Xinyan. She did not know what to say. Bai Xinyan was smiling as usual. She was not a member of the society. She did not have the hexa ear, so she could not see the changes in the encrypted channel. Right now, she was waiting for He Yuan to reply. However, before He Yuan's reply could arrive, a wave of commotion was transmitted from the activity area of Frost River Reality. Attack. A terrorist attack. The special police in the luxury room of Area A have been attacked. Dead bodies litter the ground. The transmission of the information was not particularly clear in the beginning. However, at the entrance to Frost River Reality, a man and a woman had just met. They were having a difficult conversation with each other. They were especially sensitive to this kind of information. After a moment of shock, the man did not say anything further. He buried his head and charged into the hall. The woman did not manage to pull him back. She cried out involuntarily. Shuele. Chapter 201. Inside the luxurious private room in Area A, Cat Eyes let out an irritated breath. She forced herself to shift her attention away from the chaos of the encrypted channel. But when her gaze turned to the two people in the private room who were still communicating with hand gestures, she felt that it was much more fun to quarrel in the encrypted channel. The entire situation was stirred into chaos by the whirlwind storm, but there were still some people in the center of the eye of the storm who didn't have the slightest awareness. There was no need to talk about Child. After all, he was one of the most powerful people in Summer City right now. He could be ranked as an extraordinaire. But the other person? What makes you think you can do this? Luo Nan unconsciously took a step forward in front of Cat Eyes. The distance between him and Child had already closed to within 3 steps. Luo Nan could practically reach out with his hand. In fact, Luo Nan really did reach out with his hand. His hand swung out at an angle. It seemed as if his hand had sliced past Child's head. Child's expression didn't change. He had an extremely serious and focused appearance. Luo Nan retracted his hand and spread it open again. That's waste heat. I agree with this description. Since it's waste heat, how can it be controlled? This is the problem I'm facing. My problem is a dangerous surgery, but it can be done in theory. Your problem is simply a logical error. How can it be done? Cat Eyes couldn't help but rub her forehead. She felt that Luo Nan and Child's thoughts had already entered a level that others were unable to comprehend. And they were sinking deeper and deeper. Luo Nan didn't care what other people thought. It was fine as long as he understood and Child understood. Luo Nan's original intention of using words to replace communication on the mental plane was already left behind without a trace, starting from whether or not formatting theory was systematic or not. He was convinced that this method of communication was indeed the most suitable for him. He and Child revolved around the core of the structure and order of the mental and material planes. They kept going deeper and deeper. The rules of the mental plane, the order of the material plane, the interference and influence between the two, the confusion of form and soul, the change of rhythm, and so on and so forth. Luo Nan only had a smattering of understanding of many of these things. Perhaps he knew but didn't know why. But no matter what thoughts and questions he threw out, Child was always able to understand and respond. Child used his nearly perfect shield of truth state to give the most direct demonstration. Similarly, the situation Child described was always able to evoke Luo Nan's inspiration and resonance. He stood on the theoretical basis of formatting theory and combined it with his own practice, as well as Raven and Jack's exquisite and intuitive demonstration that night. In terms of soul configuration, blending of form and soul breathing, he was always able to come up with something that made Child's eyes light up. During this process, Luo Nan's originally somewhat muddled train of thought gradually cleared up. This was especially true in the domain of the interaction and interference of the mental and material planes. Some specious things were swept clean. Luo Nan's mind was unprecedentedly clear. In comparison, the physical stress was nothing. However, as the two of them cleared up their train of thought, the conflict that had never been seen before also appeared. The main source of the conflict was Child. This ears of truth saw the wonders of the format of My Heart's a Prison, and even soul breathing, and praised the order at the mental level that it brought. But what he hoped to do wasn't just to see clearly. If Child's structure of form and soul could be viewed as an atomic furnace, then this powerful structural system was mainly established on the material plane as a foundation. Its main area of effect was also on the material plane. What manifested was his powerful body and defensive abilities that transcended the mortal plane. This structural system was powerful and highly orderly, but it was also relatively closed off. The soul and flesh interacted with each other, each occupying their own position. No matter which side it was not easy to leave the circle. Because of this, Child's development on the mental plane was limited while he obtained powerful physical strength. The storm he formed on the mental plane was nothing more than a reuse of the overflowing heat of the atomic furnace. Luo Nan couldn't be compared to Child, but he could use Raven to make a comparison. Raven's blending of form and soul pursued the seamless transition of multiple planes. She could rapidly jump between different frequencies of the mental and material plane. She possessed inconceivable adaptability, flexibility, and explosive power. Child, on the other hand, was fixed on one level and one frequency. He took this structure to the extreme and slowly expanded its range of influence. Luo Nan couldn't say the pros and cons of these two models. He could only say that if Child had been in Raven's position last Sunday night, then the charged particle cannon on the artificial lake in the park might not have been effective. But if time was pushed back and Child fell into a state of unconsciousness due to the brain pulse, it would be very difficult for him to wake up on his own. He could only be trampled upon. Of course, it was better to directly burn Child's head than to form a pulse that could knock him unconscious. From the perspective of Luo Nan's understanding, Child was already sufficiently powerful. His atomic furnace was the structural system formed from the shield of truth of the Order of Justice's secret cultivation technique. Its firmness and solidity had already surpassed the imaginations of humans. But from Child's point of view, this wasn't perfect. The purpose of cultivation is to explore the truth. We need to observe this world from a more holistic perspective. We need to discover the profound mysteries hidden deep within the world. We need to clarify the order of the world. Nothing is more important than observation. Observation is the most crucial ability for humans to understand and order the world. Currently, at the level that I can reach, my exploration is about to come to an end, but my observation ability is limited by the current structure system. Whether it is in terms of depth or breadth, it is difficult for me to make any progress. This is absolutely unacceptable. Then do you know that there are people drooling over your steel body? Luo Nan understood Child's pursuit, but he didn't believe that Child's direction was correct. Your observation is limited because of your own structural system. I call it the self-format, a high level of order. It affects and disturbs the external environment at all times. Your self-format absorbs negative entropy, and the external heaven and earth format increases entropy, producing waste heat. Then it's normal for there to be no order and no rhythm. You can use it, but it doesn't mean that you can break free from this format and start anew. It just means that you are expanding the range of control of the self-format. You are constantly distorting the heaven and earth format for your own use. You are influencing the material plane to the mental plane. And I am the exact opposite. Looking at it from this perspective, Cat Eye's judgment of Child being an all-rounder was wrong. Child's foundation was still on the material plane. He was a fleshly body strengthening from head to toe. It was just that he was so powerful to the extreme that he formed an astonishing interference power on the mental plane. Luonan thought again. He grasped soul breathing. After his soul strength increased dramatically, he used his mental power to interfere with the material plane. He formed halos, phantoms, and other anomalies. Those should be the embodiment of waste heat. To read the latest novel without error, please visit. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.